Chapter 1949. Outsider in Wushuang City. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat alone with his eyes closed. He had been cultivating in seclusion for the past 12,000 years. He broke 7 stars previously, and they was all recovered. His power had resumed its peak. Not only that, his comprehension of doctrine improved tremendously as well. Both space-time doctrine and reincarnation doctrine had already reached the extreme limit of the 8th level in Doctrine Palace. In terms of sword principle, he had also had a breakthrough. The current me has improved tremendously in my overall power. But it is a pity that I will never step out to the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, Chaotic Supreme. Since he had received the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, he had been studying it. He had been figuring out ways to break through. He had already put in painstaking effort, but he felt that he was just slightly away from breakthrough. The slight bit was just like a layer of window paper. With just one poke, it would break. However, the window paper required a great opportunity. Hence, Jian Wushuang tried to keep himself composed. Just then, Jian Wushuang was surprised and he opened his eyes. His figure moved and he left the secret room. In the lofty discussion hall in Wushuang City, Virum, Jian Wushuang's body appeared on the highest throne out of nowhere. Father, Brother Wang Yuan, 4th brother, what's the matter? Why are you in a hurry to see me? Jian Wushuang looked at the 3 of them next to him. He said before he had started cultivating in seclusion, unless it was something very urgent, one shouldn't interrupt him when he cultivated. There's something urgent. Jian Nanshan's face grew grave. Let me break this to you, Wang Yuan said directly. 3rd brother, there's an outsider in Green Fire World. Outsider? Jian Wushuang immediately looked distressed. Green Fire World, and the entire ancient battlefield was under the cover of the Great Formation. Without the permission of the higher-ups in Green Fire Palace, no one could barge in as they wished. In such a situation, there were outsiders in Green Fire World. Either he is an expert in a deep sleep in the ancient battlefield, or he is an expert from Eternal Chaotic World, who came to the battlefield through the space gap in ancient mystery land by luck, just like King Gutong back then. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. How's the power of this outsider? Jian Wushuang asked. Very powerful. Terrifyingly powerful, Wang Yuan said solemnly. Green Fire World grew over the years and our power is way beyond what it was in the past. There are many cultivators who have already reached the level of a real god. However, the outsider just stood there, and many of our real gods didn't even have the guts to fight back. If I am not mistaken, he should have reached the almighty level that you mentioned. Almighty? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. The outsider seems to have understood the history of Green Fire World. He came and attacked Green Fire Palace with thunderous measures. Green Fire Palace couldn't resist at all. We sent out the few Dao soldiers that you left behind. However, with the few Dao soldiers joining forces, he still defeated them with ease, Wang Yuan said. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. The few Dao soldiers that he left in Green Fire Palace were merely ordinary bronze-armored Dao soldiers. Theoretically, the few Dao soldiers joining forces could easily match a Sir God evenly. In the end, they were defeated with ease. The enemy was at least a top Sir God or Emperor God. Do you have any mirror image of him fighting with the Dao soldiers? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, I ordered someone to record them. Su Ro stood up and took out a token. Su Ro waved, and a huge mirror image immediately appeared in the void. In the mirror image, the outsider fought with the few Dao soldiers. A total of 4 Dao soldiers were fighting all out. But in the end, the malicious-looking young man only attacked casually and suppressed the 4 Dao soldiers easily. When Jian Wushuang saw the malicious-looking young man in the image, his eyes dilated in shock. It's him! Jian Wushuang recognized the malicious-looking young man. There were many experts in Eternal Chaotic World. There were many almighties among them. Any almighty who was famous, Jian Wushuang paid attention to them. The malicious-looking young man in the image was an Emperor God. Jian Wushuang naturally knew him. Emperor God Xia Xian, he came to Green Fire World? Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold. Emperor God Xia Xian had been wandering in the ancient mystery land. As he appeared there, no doubt, he had definitely come through the space gap in ancient mystery land. Luckily, It was only an emperor god who barged in unintentionally, and he isn't that powerful. He is well within my power to deal with. If it was really an ancient expert's, it'd be real trouble. Jian Wushuang let out a breath of relief. Emperor God Xiazin's power was ordinary, so Jian Wushuang could deal with him. If it were to be an ancient expert who had woken up from the ancient battlefield, that would be true trouble. An ancient expert, even the weakest one, wouldn't be one that Jian Wushuang could easily deal with once he resumed his peak fighting power. Third brother, you know this outsider? Wang Yuan asked. Never met him, but I know his background. So what happened after? Jian Wushuang asked again. The outsider's intention is obviously to conquer Green Fire World. Hence, after he defeated the few Dao soldiers and revealed his power, he didn't massacre the higher-ups in Green Fire World, but he left a message. He said that he would give us 1 month's time to consider. 1 month later, if Green Fire World and the 9 top forces in Green Fire World do not yield to him, he will kill all of us one by one. Besides, he even brought up you, third brother. Wang Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. Oh, what did he say? Jian Wushuang looked cold. He knows that third brother, Wushuang City Master, is widely acknowledged as the strongest person, and your word carries great weight. Hence, he said to let you go and see him, Wang Yuan said. For me to see him? Hehe. Emperor God Xia Xian has guts. Jian Wushuang sneered, but he understood. I reckon Emperor God Xia Xian doesn't know my identity. Jian Wushuang knew just how famous he was in eternal chaotic world. Even great emperor had scruples, let alone just Emperor God Xia Xian. However, Emperor God Xia Xian didn't care about him, but had relayed a message for Wushuang City Master to see him personally. He definitely didn't know Wushuang City Master's true identity. Emperor God Xia Xian probably only knew that the strongest person in Green Fire World was Wushuang City Master, but he didn't know the true name of the Wushuang City Master. If Emperor God Xia Xian knew, forget about his mad behavior. He would have run away from Green Fire World long ago. Where's this outsider now? Jian Wushuang asked. He's in the palace floating outside Green Fire Palace. Wang Yuan answered. Chapter 1950. Wushuang City Master arrived very well. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly while he put on a playful smile. Third brother, what are you going to do? Wang Yuan looked at him. What to do? Hehe, as Emperor God Xia Xian wants me to go and see him, I shall grant his wish. Jian Wushuang sneered, but his smile was as cold as a blade. On that very day, Jian Wushuang departed from Wushuang City and came before the palaces floating outside Green Fire Palace. In the palace, right in the middle of the palaces, the malicious-looking Emperor God Xia Xian was sitting on a grand throne casually, while the cultivator from Green Fire World stood below in reverence. Most of the cultivators from Green Fire World had reached real god level. Then, there were a few real gods who were nodding and bowing with ingratiating smiles on their faces. Previously, when Emperor God Xia Xian had barged into Green Fire Palace, he had suppressed the entire Green Fire Palace alone, and also the 9 top forces in Green Fire World. The news had spread like wildfire. Naturally, it caught the attention of the experts who were suppressed by Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces. They had approached him to seek his backing. Then, there were a bunch of people gathered under the command of Emperor God Xia Xian. Mr. Emperor God, according to the news that I've gotten, the higher-ups of the top 9 forces are gathered at Green Fire Palace. I reckon they are thinking of countermeasures. Besides, there were experts from Green Fire Palace who requested Wushuang City Master to get involved. A purple-haired elder reported politely. Hehe, Mr. Emperor God, you don't have to go through the trouble. You can totally wipe out Green Fire Palace directly, as well as the top 9 forces. Then build another brand new force to unite Green Fire World. Wouldn't that be easier? Yeah, Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces, although they could agree to yield to you because of fear towards I reckon it would only be temporary. They are not trustworthy. The few of them started commenting. No matter if it was within an ordinary sect or force, there would be some traitors, let alone when they were in a big world. The few real gods at the scene were traitors of Green Fire World. They knew that Emperor God Xia Xian was an outsider, But they revolted and went to his side without hesitation for their own benefit. Plus, they had been urging Emperor God Xiexan to wipe out Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces, because the few of them most likely have been suppressed by Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces once. On the highest throne, Emperor God Xiexan tapped the armrest with a malicious smile plastered across his face. I want a complete Green Fire world. Just like how the current structure with Green Fire Palace and 9 top forces are great. There's no need to wipe them out. What I want to do now is to replace Wushuang City Master, so that the cultivators in Green Fire World take me as the strongest person, treat me as a god. That'll be enough. Of course, if they don't act wisely, they can't blame me. The few real gods were unhappy, but didn't talk anymore. Then, a figure in a black robe walked in and bowed at Emperor God Xiexan. Mr. Emperor God, Wushuang City Master is here. Oh. Emperor God Xiexan raised his eyebrows. Wushuang City Master. The few real gods gasped a breath of cold air. They were born in Green Fire World. They knew the legends about Wushuang City Master. Wushuang City Master was totally a legend in Green Fire World. Any single person couldn't help but reveal reverence and worship when they bring up Wushuang City Master. Although the few real gods had already switched allegiance to Emperor God Xiexan, they were still fearful of the legendary Wushuang City Master from the bottom of their hearts. However, the moment they recalled Emperor God Xiexan's power, the few real gods felt reassured. Humph, at least Wushuang City Master is smart enough. Of course, no matter how high his position is in Green Fire World, he is just a real god after all. How could he be compared to an Emperor God favorably? From what I can see, Wushuang City Master is definitely panicking. He must be afraid that Mr. Emperor God will kill him later. What Wushuang City Master? He's nothing before Mr. Emperor God. The few real gods continued to praise him. Emperor God Xiexan sneered. Wushuang City Master ain't that dumb. Let him wait outside for a bit. Yes. The man in the black robe who came to send the message turned to leave. Outside the palaces, there were a few figures standing side by side. In Green Fire Palace that was not too far away, there were many higher-ups from Green Fire World who were paying attention. The higher-ups from the 9 top forces were standing there as they watched too. Most of them were anxious. Although Jian Wushuang had saved Green Fire World more than once, and there was no doubt about his power, the cultivators in Green Fire World weren't like before. They could tell that Jian Wushuang was only a real god. However, the outsider Emperor God Xiexan was the legendary Almighty. It was said that the top of the pyramid in the outside world, between real gods and almighties, the difference was ridiculously huge. Hence, although they were absolutely obliged to Jian Wushuang, they were still extremely worried. Mr. Emperor God tell you to wait here. The man in a black robe, who had come to send the message, was arrogant. He was unprecedentedly excited too, because he knew that those standing before him were the expert higher-ups from Green Fire World, and also the legendary Wushuang City Master. To block Wushuang City Master outside the door, and make him wait, he had never thought about it before. He wants us to wait here? The B** starred. Wang Yuan immediately cursed with anger. No hurry. As he wants to put on airs, I will let him do it. I wonder how is he going to end this later. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, but didn't care much. Qiu Yu, who was next to Jian Wushuang, shook her head slightly. She started to pity Emperor God Xiexan, who didn't know how high the sky was. Jian Wushuang didn't wait for long. There was finally movement among the palaces. Emperor God Xiexan flew over with a few real gods surrounding him. Rumble. There was vast divine might spreading out from Emperor God Xiexan as he pressed the earth. He had yet to arrive, but his voice reverberated through the universe. Among you, who is Wushuang City Master? Emperor God Xiexan's voice was cold with a tinge of a high and mighty aura. He put his hands behind his back as he stood in the void above. He surveyed everyone beneath him. He came before Jian Wushuang, but he didn't bother to look at Jian Wushuang. He heard from the real god under his command that Wushuang City Master was only a real god. Just a real god wasn't worth him taking a look at. Chapter 1951. Misunderstanding Rumble. The divine might of an emperor god pressed the scene so mightily The experts from Green Fire World at the scene revealed an expression of terror and reverence. Before an emperor god, their strongest cultivator was only a real god. They didn't even have the guts to attack. The purple-haired elder next to Emperor God Xiaxin was like a fox borrowing the awe of a tiger and roared. Mr. Emperor God came personally. Why aren't you on your knees yet? Knees? Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold as he glanced at Emperor God Xiaxin, who was high above. He lifted the corners of his lips into a unique curve. You told me to come and see you personally. When I came, you made me wait for a while. Now you want me to kneel before you? Hehe, Emperor God Xiaxin. I really wonder who gave you the courage to do such things? Jian Wushuang's voice had a tinge of disdain as it resounded in the universe. Emperor God Xiaxin, who stood arrogantly above with his hands behind him, was shocked. Since he had come to Green Fire World, although he put his power in display, he had never announced his name. For instance, the real gods who sought his patronage only referred to him as Emperor God, but no one knew his name. However, the person could call him by his name. You are. Emperor God Xiaxin looked down slightly. Only then he finally looked at Jian Wushuang. It was the first time he had looked at Jian Wushuang after he had walked out of the palace. With one glance, he saw Jian Wushuang's appearance and felt the unique aura clearly. Emperor God Xiaxin was stunned. Not only his gaze but his expression stiffened. Even his heart seemed to have stopped beating then. The entire space-time paused. Only Emperor God Xiaxin was looking at Jian Wushuang in shock. After a while, Virum, Emperor God Xiaxin quivered, and he could feel as though his scalp had exploded. You are. Sword Emperor? Emperor God Xiaxin stared at Jian Wushuang. His expression was as though he had seen a ghost. He really thought he had seen a ghost. A sword emperor who was famous for his bad name in eternal chaotic world. He of course could recognize him. Emperor God Xiaxin was extremely fearful of Sword Emperor. If he were to come across Jian Wushuang in eternal chaotic world, he definitely would take another route without hesitation and didn't dare to offend him. But then, he saw Sword Emperor in Green Fire World. How is this possible? How could it be? How could Sword Emperor be here? Emperor God Xiaxin was in disbelief. The ancient battlefield where Green Fire World was so secretive. After over 12,000 years of wandering, Emperor God Xiaxin was sure that the ancient battlefield had almost never been wandered before. It was totally sealed off from eternal chaotic world. Hence, Green Fire World on the ancient battlefield was naturally sealed off from the world as well. He had never expected himself to come across any experts from eternal chaotic world there, let alone the infamous Sword Emperor. Before he had taken action against Green Fire World, he had found out about Green Fire World, and he also knew Wushuang City Master. He also knew that Wushuang City Master was only a real god. The truth was as such, he was only a real god. However, he had never expected Wushuang City Master to be Jian Wushuang. Wushuang City Master? Jian Wushuang? Emperor God Xiaxin felt bitter. Judging by the name itself, Wushuang City Master did carry the name Wushuang. However, there were so many people with the same name. Who would associate Wushuang City Master with Jian Wushuang? Emperor God Xiaxin. Emperor God Xiaxin was still astonished, terrorized and in disbelief when Jian Wushuang spoke again. You haven't replied to my question. I'd like to know who gave you such courage? Emperor God Xiaxin was stunned, and he had yet to reply. The purple-robed elder, who was like a fox borrowing the awe of a tiger, bellowed. How dare you speak to Mr. Emperor God like that? Wushuang City Master, are you sick of living? The moment he said that, Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. However, Emperor God Xiaxin was covered in a cold sweat. He stole a glance at the purple-robed elder, and he was still smiling in disdain. Hong! Emperor God Xiaxin slapped. The purple-robed elder had yet to respond, but bang! He had already become a cloud of bloody fog. The sight shocked the surrounding people, especially the few real gods who sought the patronage of Emperor God Xiaxin. Before they managed to ask, they saw Emperor God Xiaxin attacked again. Bang! 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 There were a few continuous bangs. The few real gods who sought patronage from Emperor God Xiaxin turned into clouds of bloody fog and died. After that, Emperor God Xie Xan then let out a breath of relief. Then, he looked at Jian Wushuang. On his malicious face, there was an awkward smile. Sword Emperor, this is a misunderstanding, a great misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, a great misunderstanding. It reverberated through the universe, and all cultivators in Green Fire World were astonished. A misunderstanding? Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold. I don't think so, Emperor God Xie Xan. You wanted me to see you and I came. You wanted me to wait for you and I waited. Now, should I listen to the person from earlier and bow to you? No. How dare I? Sword Emperor, this is a misunderstanding. Emperor God Xie Xan shook his head and took out a Qian Kuan ring. Sword Emperor, I crossed the line this time. This Qian Kuan ring has all the resources that I have gathered all my life. Take this as an apology to you, Sword Emperor. I hope Sword Emperor doesn't record a demerit. I will leave immediately and never step foot in Green Fire World ever again. Leave now. Jian Wushuang said coldly. There's no hurry. As we have met, I happen to have things to ask you, Emperor God Xie Xan. For example, how did you come to this battlefield? Besides you, who else knows about this battlefield? This is simple. I can answer you right now. Emperor God Xie Xan smiled faintly, and looked as though he was more than happy to answer Jian Wushuang's question. But in the next moment, run! Swoosh! Emperor God Xie Xan turned into a shrill black flowing light, as he plunged to the vast battlefield behind. Without hesitation and extremely decisively, he knew the surrounding battlefield clearly, and also the value of Green Fire World. As he had found out about the battlefield in Green Fire World, according to Sword Emperor's bad name and his conduct, he absolutely wouldn't let him leave alive. Absolutely not. Hence he had to run. The experts from Green Fire World were dumbfounded at the sight. Chapter 1952 Killing. The cultivators from Green Fire World previously thought that Wushuang City Master was only a real god, and he couldn't match Emperor God Xie Xan evenly. However then, Jian Wushuang had yet to attack, and he only stood there, but Emperor God Xie Xan had already started running for his life without hesitation. That is Wushuang City Master, the legend of our Green Fire World. Many experts from Green Fire World clenched their fists as their eyes shimmered with adoration. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang's face changed the moment he saw Emperor God Xie Xan started running away. At first, he had wanted to ask a few questions before he killed Emperor God Xie Xan. He had never expected Emperor God Xie Xan to be so determined to run away. Humph! Can you escape? Jian Wushuang's cold voice reverberated in the universe. The moment his voice resounded, a vast purple light soared up and instantly covered a range of few million miles. One realm pearl turned into a formation at one's will. *T. Emperor God Xie Xan looked at the formation around him, and his face grew grave. Not only that, he also realized that the moment the formation took shape, the surrounding space-time would be sealed off. He couldn't even send a message to the outside world, even if he wanted to. Sword Emperor, I have no intention to offend you. I can swear that I will never tell anyone else about this battlefield and Green Fire World. Let me go. Emperor God Xie Xan roared. He regretted it. He regretted coming to Green Fire World. He had never expected to meet Sword Emperor there. Humph. So what if you swear? Secrets will only be safe with a dead person. Jian Wushuang was soaring with murderous intention. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 4 resplendent golden lights suddenly soared up and instantly burst out. That is, looking at the 4 golden lights, Emperor God Xie Xin's eyes dilated in shock. He also knew about Jian Wushuang. He knew that the scariest thing about Jian Wushuang was his 4 golden swords. The 4 golden swords possessed the power of a peak emperor god each. With 4, even Palace Master Wu Luo, who was a peak emperor god, would be suppressed. Go away. At such a crucial moment, Emperor God Xie Xan took out a huge axe. The huge axe was billowing with imposing aura. It was a chaotic divine treasure. Emperor God Xie Xan wielded the axe in his hand. Dang! 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 There were 4 continuous low thuds, and Emperor God Xie Xan suddenly retreated. However, The 4 Hongjun golden swords burst out in a different direction from the impact. Huh. Jian Wushuang was shocked. From what he knew, Emperor God Xie Xian was only an ordinary emperor god, and probably at the bottom of the tier. He didn't even have any skills that he was good at. Theoretically, such an emperor god should be killed by his Hongjun golden swords with one attack. However, he had blocked the 4 Hongjun golden swords and wasn't injured. It seems that I belittled you. Jian Wushuang's face was cold and Blood Mountain sword was suddenly drawn out from the scabbard. Under the sword intention, he took a stride forward and plunged out. Not good. Emperor God Xie Xian quaked with terror. The rumors said that Sword Emperor not only had the 4 golden swords, his close-body combat was terrifying too. If both collaborated flawlessly, he could easily kill a peak emperor god. I definitely can't fight him head-on. Emperor God Xie Xian knew his limitations. He had wandered at the surrounding ancient battlefield for over 12,000 years. Because of the opportunities obtained, his power had increased tremendously. He could barely be considered to be one with fighting power of a peak emperor god. However, with such fighting power, he absolutely didn't stand a chance before the infamous Sword Emperor. Looking at Jian Wushuang approaching him, Emperor God Xie Xian suddenly flicked his wrist and took out a bronze mirror that gave out mysterious aura. He gripped the bronze mirror tight as he concentrated his divine power. Virum, Virum. 2 boundless auras soared up from the bronze mirror. The 2 auras were as cold as if they were from Acheron. In an instant, the 2 auras substantiated in the void and became 2 black shadows. The 2 shadows were like ordinary human cultivators, but they were greater in size. They were more than 3 meters tall. There wasn't real eyeballs in their eye sockets, only a ball of black flame, just like ghost fire. Hold him back, Emperor God Xie Xian commanded, and the 2 black shadows suddenly charged at Jian Wushuang. The 2 cold yet fierce auras locked onto Jian Wushuang. What's that? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. He could feel that the 2 black shadows were fierce in fighting power. They had brought about pressure that wouldn't be weaker than an ordinary peak emperor gods. Plus, there were 2 shadows that joined forces which equaled to 2 peak emperor gods. Humph, you think you can stop me with these 2 shadows? Then you can escape. Jian Wushuang humphed coldly. Jian-yi. Swoosh. A figure suddenly appeared in the void, became engulfed in the formation, and instantly turned into flowing light. He moved to Emperor God Xie Xian at a terrifyingly fast speed. Although Jian Wushuang didn't care about Emperor God Xie Xian in the beginning, there were too many associated matters after all. In order to prevent the uncertainties, he let Jian-yi rush over. Just as he was held back by the 2 shadows, Jian-yi took action. ***. Emperor God Xie Xian grew distressed, but he wasn't hopeless. Then, he had already reached the border of the formation that was transformed with 1 realm pearl. Jian-yi was slightly further away from him. He totally stood a chance to flee. He flicked his wrist again and took out a stone rod. The stone rod was only half a rod left. The stone rod was a unique treasure that he had found during the 12,000 years he had wandered around the surrounding battlefield. It was extremely useful. It was originally complete. However, he had come across danger previously, and he had broken half of it. In a life-and-death situation, I can't think so much. Emperor God Xiezin's gaze was cold. As he gripped his palm tight, bang! The remaining stone rod exploded. After it exploded, there was a billowing power that flooded. The strength of the power had yet to reach the level of a great emperor, but it was already extremely close to one. Plus, the power concentrated in one spot as it exploded. Hong! There was a loud bang on the purple formation that was made by 1 realm pearl. Then, in the place where the power swept out, there was a huge opening. I managed to escape. Emperor God Xie Xian was filled with excitement. However, just as he smiled, he stiffened, because he had realized that Jian-yi was right behind him. And there was a scary palm which seized his throat. How could he be so fast? Emperor God Xie Xian stared and his face was in terror. This is... Great Emperor? With astonishment, Emperor God Xiezin's head had already shattered into pieces. Chapter 1953 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror. Rumble. The moment Emperor God Xia Xian died, the two black shadows that were holding Jian Wushuang back vanished into thin air, and the universe resumed tranquility. Jian Wushuang moved and appeared next to Emperor God Xia Xian. Looking at Emperor God Xiazin's dead body, Jian Wushuang looked solemn. Master, Jianyi is useless. Jianyi stood next to him in reverence. I can't blame you for this. I was too careless as I belittled Emperor God Xia Xian, Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. At first, I thought Emperor God Xia Xian was only an emperor god at the bottom of the tier, and shouldn't be able to stir up any commotion in my hands. I thought I could ask him about how he got onto this battlefield in detail, before I killed him. But I never expected that Emperor God Xia Xian would be so decisive, and start running for his life. Plus, his power has increased tremendously since before. From what Jian Wushuang knew, Emperor God Xia Xian was only an ordinary emperor god, and he didn't have any special skill. However, Emperor God Xia Xian had put his power and skill on display and shocked Jian Wushuang. If I'm not mistaken, Emperor God Xia Xian should have stayed on the battlefield for a long time, and he has received many opportunities. Hence, his power has improved so tremendously, and he has so many unique treasures. With the aid of the treasures, he nearly escaped. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. If Emperor God Xia Xian were to flee successfully, they would be in big trouble. However, although Jianyi had killed Emperor God Xia Xian, he had broken an opening on the formation from one realm pearl earlier. Even though Jianyi had killed him immediately, Emperor God Xia Xian could totally have sent out a message in that short time frame. From the moment I saw Emperor God Xia Xian, I sealed off the surrounding spacetime to make sure he couldn't send out any messages. But then when he broke the formation of one realm pearl, the spacetime was sealed off too. I didn't know if he sent anyone any messages. If he did, we will be in big trouble, Jian Wushuang muttered. He was most worried that the ancient battlefield and green fire world were exposed. By then it would attract not just one or two experts. Experts from all over eternal chaotic world would flood in. The reason why he had killed Emperor God Xia Xian was to shut him up. The most troublesome thing was that he didn't know if Emperor Xia Xian had told anyone else about the ancient battlefield when he had been wandering there. If he really did tell the others, and there was someone who knew he had died, the person would most likely expose Danu to the public. By then, Emperor God Xia Xian didn't seem to have a best friend with who could go through thick and thin together. And the ancient battlefield has such great opportunities. He shouldn't have told anyone but kept it all to himself, Jian Wushuang muttered. Of course, he was only guessing. He couldn't determine what exactly had gone on. Regardless of if there was a second person who knew of the ancient battlefield, I couldn't be bothered so much. It's best that I focus on improving myself. Jian Wushuang clenched his hand, and he then looked at the Qian Kuan ring in Emperor God Xiazin's hand. Emperor God Xia Xian had been wandering in the surrounding battlefield for so many years. He should have received many opportunities. Forget about the rest. Just the bronze mirror that he took out, and the half-stone rod that he had broken were unusual. Jian Wushuang immediately started inspecting. After a while, when Jian Wushuang flipped his hand, there was a bronze mirror that gave out a strange aura appeared in his hand. The bronze mirror. Jian Wushuang could feel how extraordinary the bronze mirror was, and he immediately started refining it. After a while, he found out the name and the function of the bronze mirror. 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror contains 5 godly spirits, and is fed by divine power. It could explode with terrifying fighting power. Jian Wushuang's eyes were shimmering with joy. He knew that the 2 black shadows that popped out of the 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror were 2 godly spirits from the realm. In 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror, there were 5 godly spirits. The 5 godly spirits were the creator of the 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror. He removed the consciousness of 5 experts using thunderous measures, then refined the 5 experts' spirits into the mirror. He fed the 5 godly spirits using divine power, and woke them up when he was in a fight. As for the strength of the 5 godly spirits, it depended on the level of divine power fed. Remove experts' consciousness, and refine their spirit into godly spirit. Such a cruel measure, Jian Wushuang complimented. He could tell that the refinery method of the five-fire godly spirit mirror was extremely cruel. The treasure could be considered a ruffian treasure. However, like the saying, in this world, there was not wicked treasure, only wicked treasure users. The more divine power it's fed and the purer it is, the stronger the fighting power of the godly spirits will be, Jian Wushuang muttered. He could feel that the five godly spirits in the five-fire godly spirit mirror were starving. It was obvious that the five godly spirits' power had been drained long ago, as they had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so many years without divine power. It wouldn't be long until Emperor God Xie Xian had obtained the five-fire godly spirit mirror. Although he had been feeding them with divine power, he was an ordinary emperor god after all. Even after he fed them, he could merely wake two godly spirits up to fight. Plus, the fighting power of the two godly spirits could only reach the level of an ordinary peak emperor god according to his divine power strength. They weren't exactly strong. However, if the five-fire godly spirit mirror were to be in Jian Wushuang's hand, that'd be entirely different. Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator. Although he had yet to step foot on the seventh step of inverse cultivation, his divine power strength was absolutely comparable to an emperor god's. In collaboration with the power of ancient tribe bloodline, he would be far beyond an ordinary emperor god. Plus, his divine power was far beyond an ordinary emperor god's, much vaster. If he were to feed the five godly spirits with his all, there's no hurry. I'll try after I return to the secret room, Jian Wushuang muttered. Besides the five-fire godly spirit mirror, Emperor God Xie Xian had many treasures in his Qiankuan ring. Most of them were chaotic divine treasure. As for the defense armor itself, there were a total of 3 pieces, just like the one Emperor God Xie Xian was wearing. It was also extremely powerful armor. No wonder when I attacked with 4 Hongjun golden swords earlier, he could withstand it so easily. It turns out that not only his power has reached the level of a peak emperor god, most importantly, he has a powerful defense armor. It seems that he has wandered in the surrounding ancient battlefield for many years, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. He briefly went through his treasure, and Jian Wushuang was quite satisfied. It was a pity that there was no other useful treasure for Jian Wushuang, besides the five-fire godly spirit mirror. Chapter 1954 Sir God Shuedao, Shuang Heir, third brother. Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and the others came next to Jian Wushuang. They looked at Emperor God Xiazin's dead body, and everyone sighed. He is an almighty. Wang Yuan couldn't help but compliment. He's an almighty and he isn't weak. It's a pity that I killed countless Almagites when I was wandering in eternal chaotic world. Emperor God Xie Xian is nothing, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. He was telling the truth. Back then, during the war in Lineage of Star, he wiped out the entire Almighty's alliance with one stroke. He had literally killed more than 100 Almighties in one breath. Compared to that, Emperor God Xie Xian was nothing. Emperor God Xie Xian had died, and the real gods who sought patronage from him were wiped out too. The forces in Green Fire World naturally cheered with excitement. At the same time, the reverence they held for their Wushuang City Master became stronger too. It turned out that although Wushuang City Master was only a real god, he could kill an almighty easily. After Jian Wushuang had killed Emperor God Xie Xian, he returned to the secret room in Wushuang City. Before him, the ancient bronze mirror floated in the air in silence. The bronze mirror gave out a unique aura. 5 godly spirits. I wonder what kind of fighting power they could display under my divine power. There was anticipation in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He immediately churned his divine power, along with the power of ancient tribe bloodline. Then he poured them into the 5-fire godly spirit mirror. These divine powers, and the power of ancient tribe bloodlines, were absorbed by the 5 godly spirits in the bronze mirror. The 5 godly spirits became stronger after Jian Wushuang fed them with his divine power. Jian Wushuang went back to cultivation and seclusion, but he didn't know that when he killed Emperor God Xie Xian, in a void within the surrounding ancient battlefield, but far from Green Fire World, Virum, a crimson flowing light that was originally flying at high speed suddenly stopped. The crimson light dispersed, and revealed a young man with crimson hair in a crimson robe. Behind the young man was a crimson saber. His body was soaring with raging aura. His aura revealed that he had already reached the level of Sir God. One should know that, besides Jian Wushuang and his sword servant Jian Yi, there was no other almighty in Green Fire World. The man with crimson hair in the crimson robe was obviously not someone from Green Fire World. Dead. Brother, he's dead. The man with crimson hair stared as he stood there with anger. He was Sir God Xuedao, a Sir God expert who recently broke through and became Sir God, and had just came to prominence in Eternal Chaotic World. At the same time, he had another identity, which was Emperor God Xiezin's Jr. Of course, there was almost no one who knew his identity in Eternal Chaotic World. Just like what Jian Wushuang knew, Emperor God Xie didn't have any friends that could go with him through thick and thin. Just like the battlefield with such major opportunities could be known as a big treasure. Even if there were to be someone he was close to, he might not be willing to share. But he was extremely close to his one and only junior. He had only told one person about the location of the ancient battlefield, which was his junior, Sir God Xuedao. When Emperor God Xie came to wander in the ancient battlefield, Sir God Xuedao came to the battlefield under the lead of Emperor God Xie. However, they didn't take any action together, but they parted ways to look for their own opportunities. Previously, when Emperor God Xie had found out about Green Fire World, he had immediately sent a message to Sir God Xuedao for him to rush over. It was a pity that Emperor God Xie had been killed by Jian Wushuang before Sir God Xuedao had managed to get there. Before Emperor God Xie died, he had broken the space-time seal that Jian Wushuang put up, and he sent a message to Sir God Xuedao. Sword Emperor is in Green Fire World. Green Fire World was Sword Emperor's old lair. Don't come here ever. After the message, Emperor God Xiezin's token didn't respond anymore. It was obvious that he had died. Sword Emperor? Sir God Xuedao's face grew in distress. Although he had just broken through and became a Sir God not too long ago, he had heard of Sword Emperor's bad name too. He was one of the experts on the top of the pyramid in Eternal Chaotic World, and he was widely recognized as the #1 genius. He was only a real god, but his fighting power was beyond a peak Emperor God. He could be known as terrifying. Sword Emperor is in this ancient battlefield? Green Fire World is his old lair? Sir God Xuedao looked horrified. At the same time, he was surprised. I know now. I have finally understood why Sword Emperor is so powerful, and why he could improve so quickly. It turns out that he has been keeping these opportunities all to himself. He has been keeping this vast ancient battlefield to himself. He possesses large resources that no one else in Eternal Chaotic World has. A person conquering such a vast ancient battlefield alone, taking all opportunities and treasures. If it were me, I reckon I wouldn't be much weaker than him. Sir God Xuedao roared as his gaze turned crimson. The crimson gaze not only showed that he was envious and jealous of Jian Wushuang, he also carried boundless hatred. Emperor God Xie and him were brothers in martial arts, and they were very close, ever closer than blood brothers. Emperor God Xie could be said to be his only relative in the world. Then, Emperor God Xie died. No doubt, he had definitely died in the hands of Sword Emperor. Revenge. Must take revenge. I have to take revenge on behalf of my brother. Sword Emperor. Sir God Xuedao's face became red. He wanted to take revenge for Emperor God Xie. However, he clearly knew about his difference in power with Sword Emperor. It would be impossible if he wanted to take revenge on his own, even when he could receive opportunities in the ancient battlefield. Jian Wushuang was also improving. Plus, Jian Wushuang was only a real god then. No matter how he improved himself, it would be impossible if he wanted to catch up with Jian Wushuang. Hence, he could only rely on the others if he wanted to take revenge. Humph, you conquered such a vast, ancient battlefield and enormous resources alone. Aren't you a little too greedy? Sir God Xuedao looked cold as he thought to himself. Before long, he had made up his mind. That day itself, Sir God Xuedao returned on the original route where he came from ancient Mystery Land to the surrounding battlefield in Green Fire Land. It was connected via a space gap. One could reach the battlefield through the space gap in ancient Mystery Land. Similarly, the battlefield could reach the ancient Mystery Land through the space gap. Sir God Shui Dao remembered the location of the space gap very clearly. Through the space gap, he returned to eternal chaotic world very quickly. Chapter 1955 Spread. In the dark void, Sir God Shui Dao's figure towered. His appearance was vague. There were dozens of people standing before him in reverence. Most of the people were real gods. There were some universe gods as well. They were taken by Sir God Shui Dao before them. At that moment, dozens of people were shivering in fear. They didn't know who the person was before them, and why he had caught them. But they knew that the person before them was a true almighty. I brought you here for you to do something for me. Sir God Shui Dao overlooked the dozens of people before him. He immediately took out a bunch of tokens. The tokens here, all of you take one each. Then, head to Vientiane Tower, Abysmal Palace, Soaring Heaven King Palace, XXX Century Phoenix Tower, Sky Blade Group. Sir God Shui Dao listed the names of the forces. Some of the forces were major sects, and some were intelligence assassin groups. Just like Vientiane Tower, they were widely acknowledged as the number ones in eternal chaotic world. Abysmal Palace and Soaring Heaven King Palace were the number one major force. Sir God Shui Dao then read out a dozen forces' names. After you get to the sects and forces, pass them the tokens. Don't speak a word after that. Sir God Shui Dao's voice was cold. Then he took out a bunch of Qian Kuan rings. In these Qian Kuan rings, there are 1,000 doctrine gems each. They are your rewards. Besides, I have already left a special mark on each of your bodies. It'll be fine if you are to complete the task as I have instructed. Whoever doesn't send the tokens to the sects or forces within 100 years, I will take action directly and kill you. Understand? Sir God Shui Dao looked at the people around him with a cold gaze. Don't worry, sir. We will definitely send these tokens within 100 years. There was a real god that answered. The others nodded their heads simultaneously. They never doubted the ability of the Almighty before them. He could kill them at any time, so they naturally didn't dare to go against him. On top of that, the reward that the Almighty offer could make them go crazy. Go ahead, Sir God Shui Dao said. Then the people immediately moved to their assigned sects and forces. In the void, there was only Sir God Shui Dao left. He slowly revealed his face, and he looked extremely ferocious. Sword Emperor Humph, you can totally kill my brother alone. But now, all experts from Eternal Chaotic World are going to find out about the ancient battlefield. I'd like to see if you are capable enough to kill all experts from Eternal Chaotic World. In no time, the top forces in Eternal Chaotic World and the major sects were going to receive a token. The token contained information, and also a mirror image. In the mirror image, there wasn't any fierce fight nor any cultivators, only a battlefield. An ancient yet vast battlefield. The mirror image showed a small region of the ancient battlefield. The top experts from Eternal Chaotic World could easily recognize from the small region that it was an ancient battlefield. Plus, it was one that everyone was unfamiliar with. It was even different to the ancient battlefield in ancient Mystery Land. There was no doubt that it was an entirely new ancient battlefield that no one had discovered. As for the information given, it was rather simple. It was the location of the hidden space gap in ancient Mystery Land. After the tokens reached the hands of the forces and sects, the experts were instantly astonished. It instantly stirred up an unprecedentedly great commotion in the entire Eternal Chaotic World. Such commotion was much greater than when ancient Mystery Land had never closed. One should know that it was a brand new ancient battlefield. One should know that there were many experts in ancient times, and it was a period of great prosperity. After ancient times, the cultivators in the universe continued to grow weaker in power, and they had never reached brilliance in ancient times. Naturally, the ancient battlefield had become a place which all cultivators continuously explored. Ever since the Second Era, there were two well-known ancient battlefields, the First Lair and Ancient Mystery Land. The two ancient battlefields had contained great opportunity. However, the first one was too dangerous, while the second one was almost out of opportunities after so many years of exploration. Hence, although the two ancient battlefields were still attractive to many experts in Eternal Chaotic World, it wasn't too strong of an attraction. However, a brand new ancient battlefield would be entirely different. A brand new ancient battlefield contained complete opportunities. Enthusiastic. Madness. The Almighties on top of the pyramid in Eternal Chaotic World went crazy. Although Almighties were already high and above, and there weren't many things in the universe that could catch their attention. However, a brand new ancient battlefield that no one had ever found and contained boundless opportunities. It was enough to make the Almighties go crazy. Forget about the ordinary Almighties. Even those great emperors on the top wouldn't be able to stay composed after they found out about the news. On Thunderbolt Island, on Sanctuary Mountain, the two great emperors who had stayed on Thunderbolt Island all this while as they took care of all affairs in Sanctuary Alliance, Ancestor Tian Chun and East Royal Emperor, they met up. The two of their faces looked extremely solemn. Who spread the news exactly? Is it verified? Ancestor Tian Chun asked in a deep voice. At the moment we don't know who spread it. The tokens were sent to various forces, and sect by some real gods and universe gods. They only know that it was an Almighty that instructed them to do so, but they didn't know who the Almighty was. As for the validity of the mirror image and the information contained in the token, it has yet to be verified, East Royal Emperor said. Tokens sent to various forces and sections. It is obviously spread with intention, and he purposely hid his identity. Could it be a trap set up by Holocaust Sect or Acheron Palace? Ancestor Tian Chun creased his eyebrows and made a guess. Shouldn't be. Although the news has yet to be verified, judging from the mirror image, it should really be an ancient battlefield, and it was only partial of the ancient battlefield. The battlefield should be rather huge. With such a huge ancient battlefield unearthed, Holocaust Sect and Acheron Palace could definitely conquer it in secret if they were to find it. Why would they spread the news to us? East Royal Emperor said. Besides, even if the two dark forces wanted to scheme against us in Sanctuary Alliance, they would only have the guts to scheme against a few of our experts. They wouldn't stand a chance to scheme against the entire Sanctuary Alliance, or the entire Eternal Chaotic World. Chapter 1956 Enthusiastic Madness. Part 1. That's true, but would better be extra cautious. Ancestor Tian Chun didn't dare to act recklessly but asked, how did the forces, sects and also solo experts in Sanctuary Alliance respond to it? How else? They're mad. East Royal Emperor said directly. It is a brand new ancient battlefield. It is different from the one in Ancient Mystery Land. The Ancient Mystery Land was found in the First Era, and the experts in First Era already searched through it once. When it comes to the Second Era, many of our experts are still enthusiastic about it. However, this is a brand new ancient battlefield. Its value is far more precious than Ancient Mystery Land by 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. Forget about the experts and forces in Sanctuary Alliance. Even I, if it isn't because the two dark forces are at the verge of action and Sanctuary Alliance needs to take charge of the overall situation, I would have been on my way to the brand new ancient battlefield. East Royal Emperor absolutely didn't exaggerate. A brand new ancient battlefield was far more valuable than Ancient Mystery Land by 100 or 1,000 times. If you feel so, I think the other few couldn't sit still either. Ancestor Tian Chun sighed. Of course they can't. I already heard that Red Dragon King, Abysmal Sanctuary, Colored Glaze Emperor, Purple Moon Emperor have already departed. I reckon the others will leave soon as well. As for the forces and experts under Sanctuary Alliance, most of them have already received the news and prepared to depart. As for those forces and sects that received the news first, I think a large number of experts have already reached the space gap located in the Ancient Mystery Land. Besides, the people that Sanctuary Alliance arranged among the special tribe sent updates too. The higher-ups and experts among the special tribe seem to have received the news too. They are getting ready too. Even the special tribes are taking action. Ancestor Tian Chun was surprised. Eternal Chaotic World was huge. Besides human cultivators, There were many special tribes, including ancient gods. The special tribes lived in different territories, and they had hardly crossed paths with human cultivators. However, it didn't mean that they weren't well informed. Once a major incident took place in eternal chaotic world, or when there was huge opportunity, not only human cultivators but special tribes would be startled. It is the first time we have experienced the birth of a brand new ancient battlefield in the Second Era. It would be impossible for it to not stir any commotion. However, the ancient battlefield didn't appear earlier nor later, but right now. It appeared at the most unstable times in eternal chaotic world. I wonder if it's a blessing or disaster, Ancestor Tianqian muttered. The birth of a brand new ancient battlefield would signify a major transformation, an opportunity to countless cultivators in eternal chaotic world. However, Ancestor Tianqian was very worried. Oh yeah, does Emperor Bai know about this yet? East Royal Emperor asked. I already sent a message to report to him. He simply asked a few questions but didn't comment much, Ancestor Tianqian said. Will he be heading over to the brand new ancient battlefield? East Royal Emperor was curious. I have no idea. But I think so. Ancestor Tianqian made a wild guess. The experts from various forces in eternal chaotic world went crazy just as East Royal Emperor had expected. The birth of a brand new ancient battlefield was too attractive to many almighties. There was no one who could resist such temptation. Naturally, there were countless experts preparing to depart to the ancient battlefield. Abysmal Palace. Sanctuary Master. Palace Master Wu Luo's face was fixed on Abysmal Saint Master, who was engulfed in darkness in front of him. 12,000 years ago, in the war with Lineage of Star, Abysmal Saint Master had been severely injured by a mysterious Emperor 13 with one stroke. He had nearly lost his life. Although he had spent the past 12,000 years in recovery, Abysmal Saint Master had gotten better, but he still looked rather pale. The birth of a new ancient battlefield was a huge land of opportunities. Abysmal Palace can't miss it. Get ready now and depart soon. I'll make a move first, Abysmal Saint Master said in a deep voice. Yes. Palace Master Wu Luo immediately took the order and went to get ready immediately. After Palace Master Wu Luo left, Abysmal Saint Master flipped his hand and took out an elixir. The elixir was of an extremely high standard, and it was from the ancient battlefield. Abysmal Saint Master swallowed the elixir, and his face became rosy after a while. I already took 7 of the elixirs. I only have a total of 9. However, I have recovered less than 70%. Abysmal Saint Master's gaze turned gloomy as hatred filled his heart. The birth of a new ancient battlefield is a chance hard to come by. As long as I receive a huge opportunity, I will have a chance to match evenly with Emperor 13 and Emperor Bai, or even be above them. Emperor 13, Emperor Bai, just you wait. Abysmal Saint Master immediately departed. Soaring Heaven King Palace. In the lofty hall, Soaring Heaven King Palace's 2 founders, Emperor God Tianling and Emperor God Tianshao, sat side by side. As for the bottom, there were a few almighties left from Soaring Heaven King Palace, but there were only 6 of them. Among them, there were 2 who Soaring Heaven King Palace had paid a great price to pull them in. The birth of a brand new ancient battlefield is really a huge opportunity. However, the ancient battlefield has yet to be verified and no one is certain that ancient battlefield will not have great danger. Just in case, I will make a trip to the ancient battlefield alone. Emperor Tianling's cold voice resounded. Tianshao, you stay put at Soaring Heaven Land and wait for my update. Wait until the ancient battlefield is verified, then send the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Yes, brother. Emperor God Tianshao nodded and reminded. The brand new ancient battlefield has great opportunities, but carries danger too. You'd better be careful. Don't worry. I know my limits. Emperor God Tianling nodded faintly. Then, Emperor God Tianling went to the space gap in ancient mystery land alone. As for the other experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace, no one had moved yet. Real Martial Arts Divine Church. Since the war in Lineage of Star, Real Martial Arts Divine Church had suffered a great loss. Their master had been killed in the war as well. Hence, their overall power had diminished. Then, With all almighties in real martial arts divine church added up, there were only 50% left, and there was only one emperor god left. Then, the emperor god's eyes were showing joy as he looked at the surrounding four Sir gods. We real martial arts divine church suffered great losses after the war with Lineage of Star. On top of that, Lineage of Star has been cornering us over the years, and we are in a desperate situation. If this continues, we of real martial arts divine church will be wiped out by Lineage of Star one day and become history. Chapter 1957, Enthusiastic Madness. Part 2. The four Sir gods from real martial arts divine church couldn't help but clench their hands. They weren't in a favorable situation. One should know that Star Extermination Alliance, who had barged into Lineage of Star first back then, were almost wiped out. The five major forces experienced unprecedented damage. However, for the other four forces, although many of their almighties had passed away, their leader, their strongest representative, didn't die. With them attending garrison duty personally, even though they had lesser almighties, they still had deterrent forces. But only real martial arts divine church had their one and only peak emperor god killed. They had lost their greatest deterrent force. Real martial arts divine church was just like Lineage of Star back then, when they had lost the master of Star Palace. Real martial arts divine church also had many enemies. Previously, they had had scruples because of the master of real martial arts divine church, because of real martial arts divine church's overall power. However, it was different now. On top of that, Lineage of Star has been seizing every chance to fight with them. Real martial arts divine church was really on the brink of collapse. It is the biggest danger we real martial arts divine church are experiencing since the establishment of the sect. But God shows sympathy and gave us real martial arts divine church another chance to glory again. This time, at the birth of this new ancient battlefield, we have to seize the chance and obtain major opportunities from it. The emperor god clenched his hands as he bellowed. The four Sir gods next to him nodded heavily. The brand new ancient battlefield was their last chance. Let's go. The five remaining almighties from real martial arts divine church immediately departed. There was no almighty who stayed back. It was obvious that real martial arts divine church was betting for the last time, and they placed all their hope on the brand new ancient battlefield that they had just unearthed. Abysmal Palace, Soaring Heaven King Palace, real martial arts divine church had already departed. Not only the three major sects, but also Divine King Island, Highest Heaven Emperor Mansion, Emperor Sword Palace and so on. Countless forces moved at the instance they received the news. A large number of experts were moving towards the brand new ancient battlefield simultaneously. Lineage of Star naturally received the news after such great movement. In the boundless void, the three hall master in Lineage of Star, and all guest elders gathered at the hall. From the expressions on the guest elders' faces, they were thrilled with excitement. Same went to Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nie Yin. Hall Master, there's an update. Almost all of the experts from various sects departed, especially those few who harbor resentment against us. They were especially fast. I heard that real martial arts divine church sent all their almighties to the ancient battlefield. Hall Master Nie Yin said and added, Hall Master Yuan, let's depart immediately too. Hall Master Nie Yin's comment immediately received recognition from all guest elders. Yes, let's depart then. The major opportunities might be gone if we are slow. The birth of a brand new ancient battlefield. The ancient battlefield is definitely filled with treasure. The first one there definitely received the most benefits. We have to hurry up. Guest elders exhorted one after another. Don't be in a hurry. Hall Master Yuan waved. Then, Jian Wuxuang wasn't in Lineage of Star. Hence, all affairs in Lineage of Star were naturally decided by Hall Master Yuan. What happened was a little strange. Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows. What's so strange about it? Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nie Yin couldn't help but turn to look at Hall Master Yuan. From the information I have gotten, someone intentionally spread it. The way this person spread the news was by arranging real gods and universe gods to deliver a token that contained a mirror image of the ancient battlefield, and also the location to each and every forces and sects. Only the major ones. These forces and these sects received the news at the first instant. But don't forget, Lineage of Star is widely acknowledged as the #1 major force in Sanctuary Alliance now. Theoretically, Lineage of Star should be the first to receive news. However, it has already stirred a commotion outside, but there is still no one who delivers us any token. Isn't it strange? Hall Master Yuan said solemnly. They heard what Hall Master Yuan had said, and they were surprised. After listening to Hall Master Yuan's comment, they thought there was really something fishy. Maybe they forgot to send Lineage of Star a message. Or maybe they sent someone but the journey was too far. Or the person who was sending the message ran into danger on the way and was killed. There are all kinds of possibilities. It doesn't mean that the person intentionally didn't send Lineage of Star any message, a guest elder said. It is possible. However, just in case, I have to report it to Palace Master, Hall Master Yuan said. The guest elders nodded. Lineage of Star honored Jian Wushuang as their leader. With such a major event, they naturally needed Jian Wushuang to give command personally. Palace Master, Hall Master Yuan immediately sent Jian Wushuang a message. Just as the entire eternal chaotic world was enthusiastic and mad because of the newborn ancient battlefield, Jian Wushuang continued to stay in Wushuang City in Green Fire World. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged while the ancient bronze mirror floated before him in the air. The difference was that the aura that the 5-fire godly spirit gave out was much stronger than before. It was obviously the result of Jian Wushuang feeding the 5 godly spirits with an enormous amount of divine power. Then, the 5 godly spirits had already reached a satisfying situation. Even if he continued to feed them with divine power, the 5 godly spirits' power wouldn't increase anymore. Let's try the 5 godly spirits' power, Jian Wushuang thought. Under his lead, a boundless aura flowed out of the bronze mirror. The aura was extremely eerie, as though it was from Acheron. Very soon, the aura substantiated into a black shadow in the secret room. The black shadow was much bigger than the one Emperor God Xia Xian had performed back then. The rage that he gave out was much more terrifying too. Die! Under Jian Wushuang's command, the black shadow immediately took a leap. His right hand formed a fist and punched the void. There was a purple wall in the void in front of it. The purple wall was a formation that Jian Wushuang had used one pearl realm to form. Its defensive power was extremely strong. But then bang! The black shadow's fist hit the purple wall, and the entire one pearl realm formation started quivering at that instant, and trembling in balance. There was no doubt that the one pearl realm formation had definitely collapsed in another similar punch. He is so powerful. Jian Wushuang's eyes were shimmering with joy. In terms of power, the godly spirit launched a punch that had definitely reached the extreme limit of an emperor god. He was much stronger than an ordinary peak emperor god. As for the godly spirit, he was originally an expert soul. Although he had lost his consciousness, he possessed some massacre skills that one had before he died. If they were to really be in a fight, even Jian Wushuang would have to go all out to suppress the godly spirit. Chapter 1958 Exposed. One godly spirit was already so powerful, but there were 5 of them in 5-fire godly spirit mirror. Plus, when the 5 godly spirits attacked all together, they could form 5-fire formation. Then, the fighting power that the 5 godly spirits put to play would be even stronger. In terms of power alone, I am far from a great emperor's match. However, with 5-fire godly spirit mirrors, I can be fearless when I run into an ordinary great emperor. Jian Wushuang smiled. With 5-fire godly spirit mirror to hand, Jian Wushuang had an extra trump card. Plus, the trump card was pretty fierce. Jian Wushuang was still filled with excitement, but suddenly, Palace Master, Hall Master Yuan sent a message. Hall Master Yuan, what's the matter? Jian Wushuang asked with a smile. Lineage of Star was just like Green Fire World then. They were both flourishing with prosperity. He had never been worried when he passed Lineage of Star to Hall Master Yuan. There's something, a major thing. Hall Master Yuan briefly shared the news about the brand new ancient battlefield. At first, Jian Wushuang could keep his cool. However, The moment he heard about the brand new ancient battlefield, his face changed. At the very end, his face grew grave. He was extremely upset. You are saying the brand new ancient battlefield is connected through a hidden space gap in ancient mystery land? Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded. Jian Wushuang quivered in fear. An ancient battlefield reachable through space gap. No doubt they were talking about the ancient battlefield in Green Fire World. Hall Master Yuan, how did you get the news? Do you know who else knows about the news? Jian Wushuang asked closely. The news spread like wildfire. The entire Sanctuary Alliance, all forces, sects in eternal chaotic world, including many solo experts, already know the news. On top of that, a large number of experts have already rushed over to the ancient battlefield. In fact, Lineage of Star received the news relatively late, Hall Master Yuan said. It has spread around? Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. Palace Master, the guest elders in Lineage of Star intend to explore the brand new ancient battlefield as well. What do you? Hall Master Yuan had yet to finish his sentence. Tell them not to head over to the ancient battlefield. Jian Wushuang roared directly. Why? Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows. Don't ask why. Just follow my instructions. It was inconvenient for Jian Wushuang to say too much. After some thinking, Jian Wushuang said again, Hall Master Yuan, tell the guest elders to get ready. I'll send Hishio back to Lineage of Star and have him bring them to a place. Where? Hall Master Yuan couldn't help but ask. They'll know when they arrive. On top of that, let Hishio bring along those Dao soldiers. Just leave a few of them behind to ensure there is nothing wrong with Lineage of Star, Jian Wushuang said. Okay, I understand. Hall Master Yuan nodded but didn't ask further. After communicating with Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan's gaze quickly redirected to the guest elders. Everyone, Palace Master has commanded all of you to not step foot in the ancient battlefield, Hall Master Yuan announced. What? The guest elders, who were originally enthusiastic and excited, became distressed and immediately burst into an uproar. They questioned Hall Master Yuan as to why this had happened. Hall Master Yuan replied in a deep voice. Palace Master didn't explain the actual reason, but as Palace Master said so, he must have his meaning. Everyone only has to follow his instructions. The guest elders were unhappy, but they didn't argue. However, they were only guest elders of Lineage of Star, and Lineage of Star couldn't really restrict them. Although they didn't say much, it was uncertain if they would follow Jian Wushuang's instructions. Wushuang City, in the secret room. Jian Wushuang sat there, but then his face grew grave. D****, Jian Wushuang roared, and he couldn't help but clench his right hand into a fist to punch the ground. Although he didn't use his divine power in that punch, merely his strength of divine body caused a huge pit on the ground. The entire secret room almost collapsed. What I worried about the most finally happened, Jian Wushuang muttered. What did he worry about the most? No doubt, it was Green Fire World being exposed to the outsiders. One should know that the battlefield that Green Fire World was located on was a great opportunity and treasure. Green Fire World was at the core of the battlefield, and it was nurtured from the battlefield. On top of that, the ancient battlefield had started to transform over recent years. Just how great was Green Fire World's value? When Emperor God Xie Xian found out about Green Fire World, he immediately wanted to conquer it and charged there straight away. It was because Emperor God Xie Xian didn't know the value of Green Fire World and the ancient battlefield entirely yet. If he were to really know, he believed that even a great emperor would absolutely go crazy as well. Over the years, he had been extremely cautious and worked hard to grow Green Fire World with his all. He himself had been trying hard to cultivate and increase his power. That was because he knew that the secret of Green Fire World would be exposed one day. He hoped that he could be standing on the peak of the universe before the secret was exposed. Then he would be able to protect Green Fire World, so that all forces wouldn't dare to lay a finger on it. But then, although he was extremely close to that step, he was slightly off after all. At such a crucial moment, the secret of Green Fire World exposed swoosh. Jian Wushuang moved and left the secret room. At the same time, he sent messages to all higher-ups in Green Fire World. Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou, Palace Master Yin and so on, to call for a discussion. Very soon, all higher-ups in Green Fire World, including the rulers of the 9 top forces, had gathered together. Jian Wushuang sat in front of these people. Father, how did the probing of the surrounding battlefield by Green Fire World go? Jian Wushuang asked. It's not bad, Jian Nantian reported. As Green Fire World continues to grow, there are more and more experts who wander in the surrounding battlefield. In terms of newly found special places, there are more than a dozen types of them. Among the special places, there are many that still have yet to be explored in depth. You know that Green Fire World is located on a huge skull, and right in between the eyebrows of the skull. Over the years, the experts from Green Fire World explored more than half the skull, and they drew a detailed star map. As for the places outside the skull, we have yet to venture in as it is too far away. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly, then he said solemnly, Send down my command. Tell all experts who are wandering in the ancient battlefield to return to Green Fire World. On top of that, prohibit anyone from wandering in the ancient battlefield. Chapter 1959. All experts descended. The moment Jian Wushuang's command was sent down, the surrounding higher-ups of Green Fire World looked shocked. Green Fire World was prospering, and the surrounding ancient battlefield was a great training ground. At such a crucial moment, Jian Wushuang had suddenly sent down a command to prohibit everyone from entering ancient battlefield. The reason behind it? Unless? Jian Nantian's gaze froze as he figured one possibility. You guessed it right. The experts from Eternal Chaotic World has already descended. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. Everyone looked terrified when they heard that. In the vast ancient battlefield, there were boundless opportunities. Right at the space gap, where it connected to ancient mystery land, Virum, there was a sudden flash of light in the hidden space gap. Then, there were 3 shadows that leaped out. The 3 of them were almighties, and they came of the same force. The 3 of them looked around after it appeared. This is the brand new ancient battlefield? It seems that we should be the earliest to reach here. As the 3 of them were chatting, the space gap behind them had another flash of light again. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. There were a few figures that leapt out of the space gap one after another. They are from Divine King Island. The one leading is number 1 Divine King. The 3 of them immediately recognized the incomer. However, it was merely the beginning. There were continuous figures that constantly leapt out from the space gap. After a short while, there were already dozens of people who had arrived at the ancient battlefield. They were merely the first batch of experts to arrive in the ancient battlefield. After them, there were many people who swarmed in. The experts who came to the ancient battlefield felt the unusual environment on the ancient battlefield at the first instant. The spiritual influence of heaven and earth is so intense. It's too intense. It's more intense than 10 cultivation sanctuaries by a dozen times. How could it be so intense? They are both ancient battlefield, but the spiritual influence of heaven and earth in the ancient battlefield and ancient mystery land, and here are so far apart. With such intense spiritual influence of heaven and earth, how amazing would it be to cultivate on the ancient battlefield? The other experts complimented then. Let's go. Let's look for an opportunity. The first batch of experts didn't wait any longer, but immediately dispersed to look for opportunities. Then the second batch, the third batch and many other experts descended. They wandered in the ancient battlefield and started their search. All experts descended. The ancient battlefield, that had been silent for God knows how many years, finally became bustling. There's no doubt that the ancient battlefield was covered with opportunity and treasure. Previously, no one had searched for them. Previously, Green Fire World had been too weak, and they didn't even have one universe god. Hence, even though they were in the ancient battlefield for so many years, they were not capable enough to obtain the opportunities in the ancient battlefield. Then, Jian Wushuang had suddenly risen and searched for a while. However, he was alone after all. With his effort alone, even if he was given tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, he wouldn't be able to search through too much of an area. Similarly, he wouldn't be able to find too many opportunities. But then, all experts had descended. All almighties in eternal chaotic world were going to search and wander in the ancient battlefield altogether. The probability of finding an opportunity would naturally be far bigger. As they searched, the opportunities would be unearthed one by one. As the experts descended on the battlefield, the cave dwelling left behind by an expert in ancient times were found in 1 month. The cave dwelling left by an expert in ancient times. If it were to be an ancient mystery land, they might not even find one in hundreds of thousands of years. However, on the brand new ancient battlefield, it only took 1 month for the first cave dwelling left by an expert in ancient times to come to light. The cave dwelling was filled with opportunities that many Sir Gods and Emperor Gods would be crazy about. In such a situation, there was naturally a fight. During the fight, there were experts who passed away. Besides, whatever that happened in the ancient battlefield naturally spread to eternal chaotic world. In eternal chaotic world, there were many forces, sects and solo experts who had received news of the birth of the brand new ancient battlefield earlier. However, just in case, many forces had only sent a few experts to explore and check on the situation. For instance, Soaring Heaven King Palace had only sent Emperor God Tianling alone. But then after a month's time, there was news about another discovery from the ancient battlefield. It was obvious that the ancient battlefield contained great opportunities. Hence, the experts who had held back previously, and those experts who had been contemplating previously, they didn't hesitate anymore and swarmed into the ancient battlefield. Even the old folks who cultivated in seclusion all year round slowly revealed themselves and rushed to the ancient battlefield. After a few years' time, there were more than 100 almighties who rushed to the ancient battlefield. In addition to experts from the special tribes, there were almost 1,000 of them. It could be said that more than half of the almighties in eternal chaotic world had arrived at the battlefield. It was a feast. An unprecedented feast. As the almighty searched madly, the time flew past. In the blink of an eye, 90 years had passed. 90 years were nothing to many almighties. If an ancient mystery land, unless one was extremely lucky, otherwise, 90 years of exploration would come to nothing. However, on the brand new battlefield, there were boundless opportunities in a short 90-year span. Forget about the others. In terms of cave swelling left behind by experts in ancient times, there were 4 in the 90-year span. In the 4 cave dwellings they contained boundless opportunities. However, the threshold to receive the opportunities were extremely high. The almighties in eternal chaotic world wandered for 90 years on ancient battlefield and gained more or less. Some who were lucky gained a bountiful harvest that made people green with envy. But even so, the places that the experts searched through were merely a small part of the entire ancient battlefield. In the void above the ancient battlefield, there were 2 Sir Gods flying side by side, and they spread their soul power. But just then, the 2 Sir Gods were surprised. They sensed a huge object in front of them with their soul power. What's that? Judging from the looks of it, it seems to be a big world. The 2 Sir Gods exchanged a look, and they looked astonished. The space gap that connected ancient mystery land wasn't too far away from Green Fire World. Emperor God Xia Xian had only came across Green Fire World after 12,000 years. Then, it had only been 90 years since the experts descended, but there were too many experts who were wandering in the battlefield. Hence, the probability of them finding Green Fire World was naturally much greater. Chapter 1960 Thunderous Extermination. Then, the 2 Sir Gods came before Green Fire World. Big world. On this ancient battlefield there's a big world? How is it possible? Could there be cultivators on this ancient battlefield? The 2 Sir Gods were terrified. What do you think? Do you want to head in to take a look? A woman in green armor suggested. The ancient battlefield is so unique. After just 90 years, there are countless opportunities that have appeared. Even cave dwellings left behind by experts in ancient times. There are as many as 4. Until now, I didn't hear anyone who said that they had found a big world. As we found it, we should of course take a look, the other brawny young man replied. The 2 of them made up their minds, and immediately flew to Green Fire World. However, before they got close to Green Fire World, swoosh, 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 there were a few figures that flew out from Green Fire World and appeared before two Sir Gods. They were led by Jian Nantian and Wang Yuan. Green Fire World was located under the formation. Anyone who wanted to enter Green Fire World had to get permission from Green Fire Palace. Through the formation, Green Fire Palace also noticed the two Sir Gods approaching ahead of time. Stop! Jian Nantian stared at the two people in front of him with a cold face. They are really cultivators. The brawny young man and the woman in green armor were shocked. Jian Nantian continued to say, Green Fire World doesn't like to deal with outsiders. Please leave now. Green Fire World? The two Sir Gods were surprised, but the brawny young man immediately flashed an ingratiating smile. We don't have bad intentions. We only want to rest in Green Fire World. I hope you don't mind us. No way. Leave this instant. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Jian Nantian said in a deep voice. Rude? The brawny young man sneered. Only a few real gods. What can you do? A few real gods have guts to block our way. You are courting death. The woman in green armor looked cold. Don't waste time with them. Let's barge in. All right. The brawny young man nodded heavily. They could tell that Green Fire World was unusual. However, a few real gods wanted them to back off. It was obviously not happening. Swoosh, swoosh. The two Sir Gods took action straight away. Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan and the others were shocked at the sight. But just then, as you don't want to leave, you may stay forever. There was suddenly a cold roar that resounded in the air. The voice contained boundless might and soaring murderous intention. The two Sir Gods who were originally plunging at full speed suddenly stopped in the void. Whose voice is this? The two Sir Gods creased their eyebrows. Suddenly, Virum. There was an intense purple light that soared up and instantly covered the entire region. A purple formation rose in the air from nowhere. The brawny young man and woman in green armor could feel the tenacity of the purple formation. The formation gave them an indestructible feeling. Then swoosh, 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 swoosh. Four resplendent golden lights suddenly burst out from afar. The four golden lights were too fast. So fast that they were beyond the two Sir Gods' imagination. *T. The two Sir Gods' faces changed when they saw the golden lights. They felt an intense danger soaring up from the bottom of their hearts. Very soon, the four resplendent golden lights appeared in front of him. They were four strange-looking golden swords. The golden swords. The brawny young man stared. He was also good with sword principle. Hence, he knew extremely well about the experts who were good with swords in eternal chaotic world. He also knew about the golden sword. Sword Emperor. It's Sword Emperor's golden sword. The brawny young man bellowed. What? The woman in green armor next to him stared. Sword Emperor? The infamous Sword Emperor? His golden swords were there? On top of that, the purple formation around them reminded them of one realm pearl that Jian Wuxia once used. The method where ones will formed a formation. Suddenly, they found out who the person who had taken action against them was. No! The two Sir Gods looked terrified. They wanted to resist and counterattack with their all. However, they were trapped while Jian Wuxiang's Hongjun golden sword possessed the power of a peak emperor god each. They burst out, and the two Sir Gods didn't even stand a chance to struggle. They were instantly killed. Swoosh! Jian Wuxiang appeared in the void from nowhere and stood next to the two Sir Gods' dead bodies. Behind him, Jian Nantian and the others came closer as well. It has been 90 years since the experts descended, and there are people here already. Jian Wuxiang muttered. He knew that all experts had already descended and Green Fire World would definitely be found. It was only a matter of time. However, it had only been 90 years, and the first batch of experts had come. It was only two Sir Gods and I can easily kill them. They didn't even have time to send out messages. However, if it were to be two Emperor Gods next or even more powerful experts, I wouldn't have any other way. I can only do what I can do. I can only fight for more time for Green Fire World, and also for myself. Jian Wuxiang clenched his hands. He was at the brink of a breakthrough, before the forces and experts in Eternal Chaotic World find out about Green Fire World. He would fight for however much time he could, because every extra year he got, or even an extra day, he would stand a higher chance to break through. After he had retrieved the two Sir God's treasure and shattered their dead bodies, Jian Wushuang had returned to Green Fire World to cultivate in seclusion. However, he didn't know that there was a young man with crimson hair in a crimson robe was hiding in the nearby void. The young man with crimson hair in a crimson robe was naturally Sir God Xuedao. Two top Sir Gods couldn't even send any message out, but were killed by sword emperors. Such a nuisance. Wasted my effort to lead them to Green Fire World. Sir God Xuedao muttered as chilliness filled his eyes. Although he had stayed back in the void, he could see everything that had happened around Green Fire World. Jian Wushuang is so powerful. Even when an ordinary Almighty found Green Fire World, I reckon he would immediately kill the Almighty before the Almighty could expose the news to the public. It looks like I have to instigate this personally. Even if I have to expose myself and be in danger, it will be worth it to get Sword Emperor targeted by all forces. Sir God Xuedao smirked coldly and took out a token. He sent a message to an expert that he knew. Emperor God Shiryu, I have a favor to ask. Chapter 1961 Instigation. On the ancient battlefield, in a spacious place, Sir God Xuedao with crimson hair in a crimson robe was standing there quietly. There was a cold-looking middle-aged man next to him. Xuedao, when we see them later, what should you say, what should you do? You should know pretty well. There's no need for me to teach you, right? The cold-looking middle-aged man, Emperor God Shiryu said. Don't worry, I have prepared. Sir God Xuedao smiled. The two of them didn't wait for long. Virum. There was a breeze. Then, there was a figure that appeared in front of the two of them. She was taller than 5 meters, and her body was curvy. On her beautiful face, there was an indescribable coldness and elegance. She stood there, and the universe naturally focused on her. Greetings, Mr. Xuedao greets Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Looking at the incomer, Sir God Xuedao and Emperor God Shiryu immediately bowed and greeted. Color Glazed Emperor, the master of Colored Glaze Sanctuary, one of the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance, in 6th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking List. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold. Her pair of eyes, which were cold and without any emotion, looked down. Sir God Xuedao, you should know that I have also been busy searching for opportunities in the ancient battlefield all these years. It is because you are an expert born in Colored Glaze Sanctuary, and because Shiryu recommended you. That's why I am seeing you now. I hope whatever that you are going to tell me gives you the privilege to see me. Otherwise, Great Emperor Colored Glaze didn't need to finish her sentence. It was already sufficient to make Sir God Xuedao quiver in fear. A great emperor usually doesn't get angry, but when they do, they could easily kill an emperor god. Let alone him, a not-so-famous Sir God, who just broke through not too long ago. Xuedao, tell her everything that you know clearly. Emperor God Shiryu exhorted. Sir God Xuedao took a deep breath and said solemnly, Great Emperor Colored Glaze, first, I have to tell you something. The person who spread the news about this ancient battlefield to eternal chaotic world was I. Huh. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's beautiful eyes froze. Emperor God Shiryu by the side also looked at Sir God Xuedao in shock. He was only in charge of recommending Sir God Xuedao. He didn't know what Sir God Xuedao wanted to tell Great Emperor Colored Glaze. So what if you are the one who spread the news? Great Emperor Colored Glaze's eyes remained cold. If you were to tell me the news at the first instant but not spread it entirely, I would have rewarded you abundantly. However now, everyone in the world knows about the ancient battlefield, so it doesn't matter who the person who spread the news was. Doesn't matter? No, Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Although I didn't inform you about the ancient battlefield on the first instance, I found you right now naturally, because I have absolute confidence in you two. I know where the biggest opportunity in this ancient battlefield lies. Sir God Xuedao said. Biggest opportunity? Great Emperor Colored Glaze's eyes dilated in shock. 90 years had not yet passed since the birth of ancient battlefield. There was a large amount of opportunity that had been found, including the 4 cave dwellings left behind by experts in ancient times. Although the 4 cave dwellings were attractive to her, a great emperor, everyone knew that the cave dwellings weren't the biggest opportunity, even though they were pretty impressive. No one would know of the biggest opportunity if one didn't spend a certain amount of time to find and flip the ancient battlefield upside down to search for it. But then, Sir God Shuedao said that he knew of the biggest opportunity in the ancient battlefield. Tell me then, what is the biggest opportunity? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked down at Sir God Shuedao. Green Fire World. Sir God Shuedao spat 3 words heavily. Great Emperor Colored Glaze, and Emperor God, sure you were confused. Shuedao, what Green Fire World? Tell me clearly. Emperor God, sure you said in a deep voice. Sir God Shuedao smiled faintly and started telling her the ins and outs. Green Fire World is a big world. However, it is located at the core location on the ancient battlefield. It was nurtured by the ancient battlefield over the years. In other words, it's just like a child that the ancient battlefield raised, and it is just like a newborn baby. It has boundless possibilities. Its value is far more precious by a few folds than a sanctuary in eternal chaotic world. Actually, forget about a sanctuary. Even if the 10 sanctuaries were added up, they couldn't even be 1/10 of its value. Whoever can conquer Green Fire World, the person will become the #1 overlord in eternal chaotic world over the years. He could even rely on Green Fire World to constantly give birth to experts and build a brand new sanctuary alliance. Whatever Sir God Shuedao said, some he heard from Emperor God Xia Xian. Some he took some wild guesses. However, whatever he said clarified the unlimited possibility and value that Green Fire World had. Great Emperor Colored Glaze couldn't stay composed any longer after hearing what he had said. Shuedao, are you serious? The ancient battlefield really nurtured a big world? And it really has such great potential. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked down at him, and her eyes were filled with absolute might. Yes, Great Emperor. Green Fire World does exist, there is no doubt about it. As for its actual value, although I made the guess myself, I believe you can evaluate for yourself. The ancient battlefield is amazing, so the big world that the ancient battlefield has nurtured, just how amazing could it be? Most importantly, just how intense is the spiritual influence of heaven and earth in this ancient battlefield, and how amazing is this cultivation environment? Plus, Green Fire World is located right at the core, and its cultivation environment would be the best location in the entire battlefield. If someone were to conquer Green Fire World, and the cultivators in Green Fire World had resources and guidance, just how great could Green Fire World be if one were to lead them in their cultivation and growth? These points that I stated, are they not realistic? Sir God Shuedao asked solemnly. Great Emperor Colored Glaze kept quiet. She was a Geet Emperor, and there weren't many things that could make her excited and enthusiastic. However, the battlefield was doing it. Then Green Fire World that Sir God Shuedao was talking about, the big world. If it was really as Sir God Shuedao said, it absolutely had the ability to make her go mad. That's not right. If Green Fire World were to really have that potential, and you were the first who found the ancient battlefield in Green Fire World, you could totally conquer it on your own. Why do you want to expose this ancient battlefield to the public? And tell me about Green Fire World. Great Emperor Colored Glaze asked coldly. Great Emperor, to be frank with you, I wasn't the first one who found this ancient battlefield. The first one who found it was my senior, Emperor God Xia Xian. Sir God Shuedao replied politely. Just as you mentioned, Emperor God Xia Xian found out about Green Fire World, and he wanted to conquer Green Fire World at the first instant. However, he met a person in Green Fire World. Who? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked. Sword Emperor Jian Wuxia. Chapter 1962 Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Sword Emperor Jian Wuxia. Sir God Shuedao looked ferocious when he read the name, and there was boundless hatred that filled his eyes. Jian Wuxia. Great Emperor Colored Glaze was surprised. Jian Wuxia is in Green Fire World too? Yes, Sir God Shuedao nodded heavily. Jian Wuxia is widely acknowledged as the #1 expert in Green Fire World, and the entirety of Green Fire World is under his control. My senior, Emperor God Xie Xan, didn't know about this but charged in directly. In the end, he died by Jian Wushuang's hand. When I received the news, I knew that I couldn't match Sword Emperor evenly, nor could I take revenge on my senior's behalf. Hence, I spread the news about the ancient battlefield. Originally, I intended to spread the news about Green Fire World altogether, so that all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World would make trouble with Sword Emperor. However, Jian Wushuang would definitely hear rumors ahead of time. By then, due to high pressure, he might hand out Green Fire World proactively. Then, I would lose my chance to take revenge for my senior. Sir God Shui Dao clenched his fists. I see. Great Emperor Colored Glaze nodded faintly. So you came to see me personally because you hoped that I'd kill Jian Wushuang for you. Great Emperor judges judiciously. Sir God Shui Dao bowed politely to Colored Glaze Great Emperor. Although Jian Wushuang is powerful, he'd definitely die if it was Great Emperor that attacked him personally. By then, Great Emperor could conquer the entire Green Fire World. It's a win-win situation. Hee. If Green Fire World has the great potential you describe, even I couldn't conquer it on my own. Sanctuary Alliance would definitely get involved. However, if I could conquer Green Fire World, I would receive a great advantage. Great Emperor Colored Glaze smiled. Sir God Shui Dao, I promise you that I will kill Jian Wushuang for you if you lead me to Green Fire World. Thank you, Great Emperor. Sir God Shui Dao was filled with excitement. He immediately asked, Great Emperor, when do we depart? We won't delay any more. We leave this instance. Great Emperor Colored Glaze said in a cold voice. Sir God Shui Dao immediately led the way while Great Emperor Colored Glaze and Emperor God Shu flew to Green Fire World together. The three of them shuttled through the ancient battlefield, but didn't stop at all along the way. After some time, the three of them arrived near Green Fire World. Great Emperor, take a look. This is Green Fire World. Sir God Shui Dao pointed at the big world in front. As expected, it is really a complete big world. The closer we get, the more intense the spiritual influence of heaven and earth is. It seems that Green Fire World is really in the core of the ancient battlefield. Great Emperor Colored Glaze stared at Green Fire World in front of her as joy shimmered in her beautiful eyes. Sure, you stay here with Sir God Shui Dao. I'll head over to meet Sword Emperor. Great Emperor Colored Glaze said, and immediately flew off. Vroom vroom. When Great Emperor Colored Glaze's original body with divine might appeared at the border of Green Fire World, the higher-ups immediately noticed through the formation. Jian Wushuang recognized the incomer at the first instant. Great Emperor Colored Glaze, it's her? Jian Wushuang was surprised. He had once crossed paths with Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Back then, in order to take revenge on Soaring Heaven King Palace, he had barged into Colored Glaze Sanctuary to massacre the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace and corner them in a desperate situation. In the end, Soaring Heaven King Palace had asked Great Emperor Colored Glaze for assistance. The Great Emperor had made an appearance personally and only spoken one sentence. Jian Wushuang had no choice but to back off. Hence, there was barely a dispute between Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Colored Glaze. At least, Jian Wushuang didn't quite like Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Great Emperor Colored Glaze descended personally. It would be impossible if I wanted to hide the existence of Green Fire World. Jian Wushuang knew that clearly. Just then, Jian Wushuang, the cold voice that contained boundless might suddenly rang from Great Emperor Colored Glaze's mouth and reverberated in the surrounding void. Jian Wushuang, who was in Green Fire World, was shocked. Great Emperor Colored Glaze knows of my existence? Jian Wushuang thought. He instantly understood that it was definitely the person who had intentionally spread the news of Green Fire World, and himself, that informed Great Emperor Colored Glaze. When the news spread, it never brought up me or Green Fire World. But he only informed Great Emperor Colored Glaze alone. Hee. The person is worried that I won't take the pressure and abandon Green Fire World. By then he wouldn't stand a chance to kill me. Jian Wushuang guessed the person's thought instantly. As she already knew of his existence, Jian Wushuang didn't intentionally hide. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had already leaped out of Green Fire World and come before Great Emperor Colored Glaze. As for the experts from Green Fire World, they stayed back in Green Fire World. A great emperor had descended personally. The cultivators from Green Fire World weren't capable enough to deal with it. It's really you. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Jian Wushuang, and she looked surprised. She was in doubt of what Sir God Shui Dao had said earlier. But then when she saw Jian Wushuang, her suspicion vanished. It seems like the person was right. Your Green Fire World is really unusual. Otherwise, it would be absolutely impossible to nurture such a top monster. Great Emperor Colored Glaze said coldly. Great Emperor Colored Glaze, as you already know of Green Fire World, and you also know of my existence, then we shouldn't beat around the bush. Tell me, what do you want? Jian Wushuang's face was cold. Then, he was totally different from when he had been on Soaring Heaven Land. Back then, when he had been dealing with Great Emperor Colored Glaze, she had only been a consciousness incarnation. However, he had no choice but to lower his head. But then, although Great Emperor Colored Glaze had come personally, he wasn't fearful of her at all. Very simple. Let me see your Green Fire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. Then, Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. If there's nothing unique about Green Fire World, I naturally will leave immediately. If it is just like how the person mentioned, I will stay back in Green Fire World for a while. Great Emperor Colored Glaze smiled. Although she had put it in an indirect way, Jian Wushuang knew the meaning behind it clearly. What if I don't agree? Jian Wushuang said. Don't agree. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's voice was cold. If you don't agree, I will attack directly and conquer Green Fire World. Whoever doesn't yield to me, I'll kill all of them. As for you, Jian Wushuang, I know that there's a mysterious expert, Emperor 13, behind you. Because of him, I will not kill you. But it's good enough as long as I trap you in or suppress you. Then, if Emperor 13 surfaces, I shall pass you back to him. Chapter 1963 Old Woman. To conquer a sanctuary, and become an overlord in eternal chaotic world, Great Emperor Colored Glaze wasn't stupid. Plus, she was pretty well informed. The war that had happened in Lineage of Star. She knew about it, and she had naturally heard of the mysterious expert from ancient times, Emperor 13. He was a super expert, and he was definitely related to Jian Wushuang. He absolutely wouldn't allow Jian Wushuang to die. Back then, Abysmal Saint Master had wanted to kill Jian Wushuang. In the end, Emperor 13 had popped up from nowhere. With one stroke, he had almost killed Abysmal Saint Master. His terrifying power was only stronger, not weaker than Emperor Beige. She wasn't even as strong as Abysmal Saint Master. Hence, she didn't have the courage to kill Jian Wushuang. As for what she had promised Sir God Shui Dao, she merely wanted Sir God Shui Dao wanted to lead her to Green Fire World. She had never thought of killing Jian Wushuang. However, as long as she didn't kill, merely trapped or suppressed, she believed that Emperor 13 wouldn't find trouble with her. Jian Wushuang, do you want me to attack, or do you want to make the choice on your own? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Jian Wushuang coldly. Jian Wushuang wasn't angry but smiled. Colored Glaze, you're an old woman that has lived for God knows how many years. Aren't you too arrogant? What did you say? Great Emperor Colored Glaze's face grew grave. Old woman? Jian Wushuang had said that she was an old woman, and said that she was arrogant. That was right. She had lived for many years, and she was considered an old monster. However, she was a great emperor. Even the few great emperors on the same level as her didn't dare to call her an old woman. Who the H*LL did Jian Wushuang think he was? Why? You didn't hear that clearly? Do you want me to repeat it? Jian Wushuang scoffed. I said you an old woman are too arrogant. I respected you and called you Great Emperor Colored Glaze. If I don't, who the H*LL are you? Green Fire World is not a place for people of such a low standard as yourself. If you are wise, hurry up and leave. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang's face turned ice cold. He didn't want to act courteously with Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Courting death. Great Emperor Colored Glaze raged with anger. A great emperor, a high and mighty existence in eternal chaotic world. How dare one offend her? On top of that, not only had Jian Wushuang offended her, he had challenged and even humiliated her. Great Emperor Colored Glaze couldn't hold her anger back. Rumble. Boundless divine might soared from Great Emperor Colored Glaze and filled the universe. Under such great divine might, even the void was quivering in madness, as though it was shivering in fear. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's eyes were cold, and her face was covered in frost. Her divine might spread and chilliness instantly covered the universe. Walala. Large chunks of void were frozen entirely around Great Emperor Colored Glaze. The surrounding void of hundreds of thousands of miles froze. Jian Wushuang was the first to dash forward. The shocking chilliness was almost freezing him to death. Jian Wushuang, don't think that there's a mysterious expert behind your back, and I can't do anything about you. Even though I can't kill you, I can teach you a lesson at least. That's something I can still do. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's cold voice reverberated in the universe. At the same time, her jade finger extended slowly. Pust. The cold ice in the air suddenly stirred and instantly formed 3 cones. The 3 ice cones weren't huge, but contained a chilliness. It was enough to shock any emperor god. Die. Great Emperor Colored Glazes will moved. The 3 ice cones charged at Jian Wushuang at lightning speed. Jian Wushuang stood in the void and felt the surrounding space-time freeze. Even his divine body felt enormous pressure. It was extremely difficult when it came to movement. It would be unrealistic if he wanted to resist the 3 ice cones. Plus, even if he really did block them, the power of a great emperor wasn't something he could match with evenly. However, there was no need for him to take action. Right when Great Emperor Colored Glaze, there was a flowing light that had plunged out from green fire world behind him. Wow! As the crimson cloud churned, Jianyi appeared before Jian Wushuang. Dealing with the 3 ice cones that burst out, Jianyi slowly raised his hand. Without too much of a movement, he merely snapped his fingers in the direction that the 3 ice cones were flying from. Pack! 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 The 3 ice cones burst out simultaneously and filled the air with shattered ice pieces. The attack of Great Emperor Colored Glaze collapsed. At the same time, there was a crimson cloud that swept out from Jianyi's body, just like a crimson ocean that surged to the surroundings. Jian Wushuang was engulfed in a crimson ocean, and his movement resumed normal without any restriction. Jianyi, well done. Jian Wushuang looked at Jianyi with a satisfied gaze. Thank you, master, for your compliment. Jianyi smiled and nodded. There was unprecedented enthusiasm in his eyes. Looking at the sight, Great Emperor Colored Glaze in the nearby void looked shocked. Great Emperor? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Jianyi with a cold gaze. She could feel that Jianyi had divine power, and an aura that wasn't much weaker than hers. Besides, Jianyi had attacked and instantly shattered her attack. Judging from the way he broke her frozen space-time, Jianyi was a true Great Emperor expert. In terms of power, he might not even be weaker than her. How could it be? There are only so many great emperors in eternal chaotic world. Previously, there was Emperor 13 out of nowhere. Now there was another one. Similarly, there was no sign at all. Great Emperor Colored Glaze creased her eyebrows. She didn't know that Jianyi was like Emperor 13. They were all experts from ancient times. And they were both from the nearby ancient battlefield. Only Emperor 13 was more mysterious, and he wasn't under Jian Wushuang's control. However, Jianyi had been soul-controlled by him long ago. Soul-controlled, Jianyi naturally obeyed his command. Previously, Jianyi had been severely injured, and he had never recovered his power. Back during the war in Lineage of Star, Jianyi had only recovered to peak middle stage chaotic realm, but his fighting power was extremely close to Great Emperor. However, compared to Great Emperor, he was slightly weaker. However, ever since Jian Wushuang had returned to Green Fire World, Jianyi had continued to recover his power in seclusion. With the aid of Green Fire World's current increasing spiritual influence of heaven and earth, his power was recovering at a terrifying rate. 12,000 years had passed, and the current Jianyi had yet to recover entirely and resumed the strongest status. However, he had already reached peak chaotic realm. Peak chaotic realm equaled Great Emperor level in eternal chaotic world. Chapter 1964 vs. Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Humph. No wonder you dared to fight against me. It turns out that besides Emperor 13, you have another great emperor expert with you. Great Emperor Colored Glaze was cold. However, even though he was a great emperor, there is a difference in power. With him alone, can he hold me back? Great Emperor Colored Glaze had terrifying chilliness, and it soared up again. Walala! Everything in the universe seemed to freeze. There was suddenly a green spear in Great Emperor Colored Glaze. The spear was 3 meters long and gave out a cold aura. Great Emperor Colored Glaze moved, and was already in action. Hong! There was suddenly a huge ice hole in the space-time. Then the cracks extended. From the huge ice holes, roar! There was a terrifying roar, and a primeval beast substantiated from the ice. Along with billowing power, the primeval beast was already before Jianyi. Jianyi looked cold as he was engulfed in the core of the Crimson Ocean, just like a blood god. He stole a glance at the primeval beast, and he immediately pointed. He pointed and heaven and earth became quiet. The primeval beast that was substantiated from ice suddenly had a hole in its chest. There was boundless divine power, and it instantly shattered the primeval beast into pieces. The primeval beast just broke apart, and there was a tall, cold figure that broke the air. Great Emperor Colored Glaze carried no emotions, and the gloomy spear in her hands burst out mercilessly. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. It burst out continuously for a total of 9 times. Every time it burst out, there was a brilliant white light in the void. The speed couldn't be described even with thunder or lightning. Most importantly, the 9 bursts sealed the space-time and locked Jianyi so he had no chance to dodge. Humph! Jianyi's face grew dim, but both his hands moved. Blood Demon Hand. Bang! 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 There were continuous crimson palm prints that appeared. Similarly, he did it 9 times. With every clap, the crimson palm print would turn into a huge mountain. The huge mountain had a churning crimson cloud, just like a volcano. Great Emperor Colored Glaze stabbed with her long spear, and there was boundless chilliness. The volcano and ice finally collided. Hong! There was a ferocious bang. The entire universe was covered in boundless ice and crimson cloud. It became glorious scenery. Jian Wuxuang stood in the nearby void, and could clearly feel the clashing of 2 bolts of power. There was a spark in his eyes at the sight. A great emperor's power was much stronger than an emperor god's. In terms of power, it wasn't comparable. Just then, swoosh, there was a figure that burst out of the core of the battlefield. It was Jianyi. As for Great Emperor Colored Glaze, she was still standing at the core in the universe. The shocking chilliness filled more than half of the universe. It was obvious that Great Emperor Colored Glaze had the upper hand in the fight. Humph! Merely the level of a great emperor, and you want to stop me with such a standard of fighting power? Great Emperor Colored Glaze roared coldly. Then, Jian Wuxuang's eyes dilated in shock. Jianyi had only recovered to peak chaotic realm, but had yet to reach his most powerful status. In terms of power and strength, he was weaker than Great Emperor Colored Glaze in the 6th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. However, Jianyi was an expert from ancient times after all. He had many skills. As expected, after Jianyi was defeated by Great Emperor Colored Glaze, his figure suddenly became ghostly. Then, there were crimson shadows that suddenly appeared from nowhere. The densely dotted crimson shadows clustered in the surrounding void. With naked eyes or even with soul power, no one could determine which one among the crimson shadows was Jianyi's original body. Until Jianyi attacked, wow! There was a palm that appeared behind Great Emperor Colored Glaze silently. The palm extended its finger, and the tip of the finger was covered from crimson light, as it pointed at Great Emperor Colored Glaze's head. Behind Great Emperor Colored Glaze, there were ice cones that were 2 meters long that appeared from nowhere. There were a total of 12 cones that flew out at the same time. The ice cones were extremely fast, and he wasn't affected. It pierced Jianyi's body, but didn't touch his original body at all. Swoosh! Jianyi's body was ghostly, and he appeared next to Great Emperor Colored Glaze again. This person is so fast. The manipulation method of his space-time power is impressive too. Great Emperor Colored Glaze creased her eyebrows. But suddenly, Great Emperor Colored Glaze's 5 meters tall body extended 2 heads and 4 arms. In addition to Great Emperor Colored Glaze's own head and arms, 3 heads and 6 arms, it also contained a unique power superposition method. Both heads and arms could flawlessly collaborate. Her 6 arms held the cold spear and stabbed Jianyi mercilessly. Besides, on her 3 heads, one of her eyes was shimmering in a strange light which was captivating. The second head roared with her mouth open, and her roar shook the space-time. The last head had the third eye opened in between her eyebrows. Then, there was a resplendent light that contained boundless destroying aura that burst out at Jianyi. Jianyi creased his eyebrows. He was forced to retreat once again by Great Emperor Colored Glaze's skills. His speed and his manipulation of power of space-time were far ahead of Great Emperor Colored Glaze's. With his speed and manipulation of power of space-time, Great Emperor Colored Glaze performed 3 heads and 6 arms, and also many other skills during their fierce battle, but couldn't do anything about Jianyi. Both parties were matched evenly and Great Emperor Colored Glaze barely had the upper hand. Great Emperor Colored Glaze lives up to being in 6th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list. She is very powerful, and she has many skills hidden up her sleeve, Jian Wushuang muttered. It's a pity that Jianyi's power only recovered to peak middle stage chaotic realm not too long ago, and he is still a little far off his prosperous peak. Otherwise, however, Jianyi could fight with Great Emperor Colored Glaze to this state. It was already good enough. On the battlefield, Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked extremely cold. This person's manipulation of power of spacetime is so strange. Luckily, he isn't as powerful as I am otherwise. I'm afraid I might not be his match. Great Emperor Colored Glaze knew her limitations. When she had been fighting with Jianyi, Great Emperor Colored Glaze had constantly looked at Jian Wushuang. However, I can do nothing about this person. There's no point in continuing to fight with him. He obviously is only listening to Jian Wushuang's command. As long as I capture Jian Wushuang, I can control him. Chapter 1965 Retreat. Once Great Emperor Colored Glaze understood that, she made up her mind. Go away. Great Emperor Colored Glaze bellowed, and the chilliness in her body flowed out. The boundless chilliness substantiated before her, and formed 3 ice dragons. Every single one of the 3 ice dragons was 10,000 miles in length, and they gave out billowing auras. Any one of them could easily kill an emperor god. Then, as Great Emperor Colored Glaze controlled the 3 ice dragons, they let out a bellow and instantly plunged at Jianyi. Dealing with 3 ice dragons, Jianyi didn't act recklessly, but launched a full hit to match him evenly. However, just as he prepared to deal with the 3 ice dragons, Great Emperor Colored Glaze took a huge step back. Then, she turned to charge at Jian Wushuang. A terrifying chilliness and cold aura instantly covered Jian Wushuang. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's eyes, which were fixed upon Jian Wushuang, turned cold too. Looking at Great Emperor Colored Glaze charging at him, Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated in shock, but he didn't panic. He flipped his hand, and there was a bronze mirror that let out an ancient aura in his hand, the 5-fire godly spirit mirror. He had just gotten the 5-fire godly spirit mirror not too long ago, and it was his first time displaying its power outside. Rumble! Boundless divine power flowed into the bronze mirror, and the 5 godly spirits in the bronze mirror were woken up by Jian Wushuang. Then they plunged out. Tall dark shadows substantiated in the void. There was a total of 5. Plus, all the 5 dark shadows were huge, and every single one was more than 5 meters tall. They gave out chilly aura, as though they were from Acheron. 5 godly spirits, stop her! At Jian Wushuang's command, the 5 dark shadows lifted their heads at the same time. In their eye sockets there weren't eyeballs. There was only dancing ghostly fire. That very moment, the ghostly fire was churning, and it seemed rather impatient. Hong! 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 The 5 godly spirits moved simultaneously. In the first instance they formed a 5-fire formation. Once they appeared before Great Emperor Colored Glaze, the power of the 5 godly spirits and 5-fire formation exploded. After a loud bang, the 5 godly spirits took a step back at the same time. However, Great Emperor Colored Glaze was stopped. What's that? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at the 5 godly spirits that had appeared in front of her in shock. She could tell that the 5 godly spirits weren't war puppets, nor were they real. They should have existed in a unique way. Plus, the fighting power of each godly spirit wasn't too strong, and they should be a distance from a great emperor. However, when the 5 godly spirits joined forces with the aid of the formation, the pressure that they brought to her was not weaker than an ordinary great emperor's. In terms of power and strength, they might even be stronger than Jianyi had been previously. Jian Wushuang has such powerful treasure. Great Emperor Colored Glaze couldn't help but steal a glance at the bronze mirror in Jian Wushuang's hand. She knew that the 5 godly spirits had popped out from the bronze mirror. The 5 godly spirits had joined forces and possessed the fighting power of a great emperor. Die! The 5 godly spirits were raging with anger. They were refined into spirits via brutal methods. All their lives, they wouldn't be able to shake it off. To them it was absolutely more painful than death. Over the years, they had naturally accumulated boundless hatred and cruelty. The hatred was taken out on their opponents. The 5 godly spirits formed 5 fire formation and fought with Great Emperor Colored Glaze. At the same time, Jianyi had already taken care of the 3 ice dragons, and he was charging at Great Emperor Colored Glaze. When they joined forces, it equaled the fighting power of 2 great emperors. Although Great Emperor Colored Glaze was on the 6th place on Heaven and Earth's Supreme Ranking list, she was considered the stronger one among great emperors. However, she wasn't capable enough to fight 2 great emperors at the same time. Plus, Jianyi and the 5 godly spirits displayed fighting power that wasn't weak. In a short while, Great Emperor Colored Glaze was already suppressed. *A minute. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold, as there was fire burning in her eyes. However, no matter how angry she was, fighting power was on display. She was really not capable enough to match evenly with Jianyi and the 5 godly spirits. Even under Jianyi and the 5 godly spirits' pressure, she wanted to find a chance to attack Jian Wushuang, but she had failed to do so. Colored Glaze, do you want to continue to fight? Jian Wushuang stood in the void nearby as he humphed coldly. ****. Great Emperor Colored Glaze was angry, but she couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. Humph. You're so stubborn. You really think that I can't make you, a great emperor, stay? Jian Wushuang's voice became cold. Don't forget that my sword servant and I cultivated the secret skill of Star Palace. Secret skill of Star Palace? Great Emperor Colored Glaze stunned. She naturally knew about the secret skill of Star Palace. She also knew that Jian Wushuang had cultivated the 3rd volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace successfully. Back then, with that one move, he had wiped out almost 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance with one hit. His power had already reached the extreme limit of a great emperor. In Eternal Chaotic World, besides Emperor Bai and the mysterious Emperor 13, they reckoned no one could perform such an attack. Now, she was against Jianyi and 5 godly spirits. She was already suppressed entirely. By then, if Jian Wushuang were to attack again, attack at that level, her life might be threatened even though she was a great emperor. I will count to 3. If you don't retreat, I'll immediately launch my killer hit. Don't think I'm joking. Jian Wushuang's voice was low. 1, 2. Jian Wushuang had yet to count to 3. Great Emperor Colored Glaze, who was fighting with Jianyi and 5 godly spirits ferociously, suddenly retreated. As she retreated, her cold voice resounded in the universe. Jian Wushuang, I am defeated. But don't be too happy just yet. You think you'll be able to protect Green Fire World on your own? You are dreaming. Just you wait. In no time, I will return. Her voice continued to reverberate. Then Great Emperor Colored Glaze's body disappeared at the end of the sky. In the void in front of Green Fire World, Jian Wushuang stood. His face grew grave when he heard what Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. He hadn't lied earlier. If he were to perform his trump card without scruples, he was confident that he could make Great Emperor Colored Glaze stay forever. However, there was no use if she stayed. The secret of Green Fire World would be exposed. Even if he killed Great Emperor Colored Glaze then, there would be other Great Emperor or experts who would come. He might as well save the final trump card to deal with the upcoming danger. Plus, a Great Emperor expert was associated with many. Anyone's pass would stir a great commotion, and inflict a great outcome. Chapter 1966 Three Great Emperors. Although I force Great Emperor Colored Glaze to back off for now, in no time, Great Emperor Colored Glaze will definitely bring other experts along again. She might even lead all the experts from various forces in eternal chaotic world over. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. Green Fire World. Its value was really unbelievable. When Emperor God Xie had first discovered Green Fire World, and only find out briefly about Green Fire World, he determined that Green Fire World had the potential to become another powerful sanctuary. But in actual fact, the potential of Green Fire World was far beyond what Emperor God Xie and Sir God Shuedao had imagined. Such a place, even Sanctuary Alliance would care about. Forget about the experts from various forces. As for Jian Wushuang, he naturally wanted to protect Green Fire World alone, and not let various forces and Sanctuary Alliance carve it up. Hence, he was destined to go against the entire eternal chaotic world. Regardless, Green Fire World is my hometown, it is my root. As long as I am alive, I will not allow anyone to take a share of it. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands tightly, and he had already made up his mind. In the void near Green Fire World, swoosh, Great Emperor Colored Glaze's figure appeared again. At that very moment, there was coldness on her enchanting face, and she didn't look good at all. Next to Great Emperor Colored Glaze, Emperor God Shiryu and Sir God Shuedao stood politely. The two of you, keep watch of Green Fire World from today onwards. Watch their every movement. Great Emperor Colored Glaze commanded. Yes. Emperor God Shiryu and Sir God Shuedao nodded. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's figure turned illusionary and vanished into thin air. Emperor God Shiryu looked calm at the sight, but Sir God Shuedao looked curious. I never expected that Great Emperor God Colored Glaze wouldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang when she attacked personally. She was forced to retreat. Sir God Shuedao was surprised. He knew Jian Wushuang's reputation, and he also knew of Jian Wushuang's battle achievement. However, these battle achievements weren't enough to fight with the Great Emperor. But then, Great Emperor Colored Glaze left. She had definitely wanted to invite other Great Emperor experts to attack together. However, even if a few Great Emperors joined forces, I'm afraid they could only force Jian Wushuang to hand out Green Fire World. As for killing Jian Wushuang, I reckon there is no one who dares to do so, Sir God Shuedao thought. In the beginning, he had really thought Great Emperor Colored Glaze would kill Jian Wushuang to take revenge on his behalf. However, he understood from the conversation between Great Emperor Colored Glaze and Jian Wushuang that Great Emperor Colored Glaze had scruples with the mysterious expert behind Jian Wushuang, Emperor 13. She didn't have the guts to kill Jian Wushuang for real, even though Jian Wushuang had humiliated her on the spot. He had called her an old woman and told her to leave, but Great Emperor Colored Glaze had only wanted to teach him a lesson. In other words, Great Emperor Colored Glaze had only pretended to promise him from the very beginning. As Great Emperor Colored Glaze had scruples with Emperor 13, the other Great Emperors that she invited should be the same as well. To kill Jian Wushuang for real, Great Emperor Colored Glaze, and the Emperor Gods that she was going to invite wouldn't do. It seems that there is only one final move to take if I really want Sword Emperor to be killed for senior. Sir God Shuedao thought coldly. He didn't react much, so Emperor God Shiryu by his side couldn't see anything different in him. In the vast void on ancient battlefield, Great Emperor Colored Glaze floated in silence. Soon a dark figure plunged over. The dark figure belonged to Abysmal Saint Master. Colored Glaze, what's the hurry? Abysmal Saint Master appeared before Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Abysmal Saint Master rushed to the ancient battlefield at the first instant. During the 90 years of wandering in the ancient battlefield, he had really obtained some opportunities, but not many. At that moment, he had yet to receive any opportunity that would allow him to improve his power tremendously. His power had yet to recover to his peak by then. I look for you. Naturally, there's a good deal. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Abysmal Saint Master and immediately briefly told him about Green Fire World. Great Emperor Colored Glaze said, and Abysmal Saint Master's gaze became sharp. The ancient battlefield nurtured a big world? Abysmal Saint Master was astonished. Green Fire World does exist, but it's a pity that Jian Wushuang is there. I originally wanted to attack and conquer Green Fire World, but in the end I was forced to retreat. I have no choice but to look for you, Great Emperor Colored Glaze explained. Jian Wushuang? Why is this boy everywhere? Abysmal Saint Master's gaze was cold. To Jian Wushuang, he harbored murderous intention. If I'm not mistaken, Green Fire World should be Jian Wushuang's hometown, where his roots are. The reason why his cultivation speed is so shocking, and why he is so talented, it should be related to Green Fire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. That's right. Jian Wushuang is too eye-catching. I reckon he is much more brilliant than Emperor Bai was back then. Such top genius would be considered unbelievable in the first era, let alone the second era. I think only Green Fire World could nurture such impressive genius. This boy is lucky that he could be born in such a place. Abysmal Saint Master clenched his hand and turned to Great Emperor Colored Glaze by his side. Colored Glaze, you came to look for me to join forces with me to fight Jian Wushuang, right? Yes, Great Emperor Colored Glaze nodded. Jian Wushuang is Green Fire World's biggest reliance. If we want to conquer Green Fire World, we have to get rid of Jian Wushuang first. According to what you said, there was a great emperor with Jian Wushuang, and he has a treasure that could control 5 dark shadows that possess the fighting power of a great emperor if forces join. On top of that, he himself has trump cards to hand. With such fighting power, even if I were to work together with you during my peak time, we might not stand a chance, Abysmal Saint Master said. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's gaze grew dim. That was true. Although Abysmal Saint Master and her were both powerful great emperors, Abysmal Saint Master had yet to recover from his injury completely. With the two of them joining forces, they could at most be evenly matched with Jian Wushuang. Even though they had the upper hand, it wasn't enough. How about this? Let's wait for a while. Let me ask another person, Abysmal Saint Master said. All right, Great Emperor Colored Glaze nodded. Abysmal Saint Master immediately sent a message. The two great emperors waited in the void for a while. Very soon, the third great emperor joined them. With purple robes, a lazy look and a middle-aged appearance, he looked rather gentle. The purple-robed lazy middle-aged man was Great Emperor Zisu in 5th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list. Chapter 1967 known to all. Zisu, it's really you? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Great Emperor Zisu in shock. From what she knew, Great Emperor Ziyu had always been taking an indifferent attitude in fighting for fame and fortune. Like ranking on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list, regardless of if he was on the 5th place or the last place, he didn't care. He hardly fought, and he didn't care much about Sanctuary Alliance. He could be said to be a great emperor who was aloof. However, Great Emperor Zisu rushed over. I never expected Great Emperor Zisu, who is widely acknowledged as aloof, would be interested in Green Fire World as well. Great Emperor Colored Glaze sneered. A big world that is nurtured by the ancient battlefield. It's not strange that I am interested in it. Great Emperor Zisu smiled. Humph. Don't think that I don't know that you are not interested in Green Fire World, but Jian Wushuang. Abysmal Saint Master looked at Great Emperor Zisu, and there was a strange look. Regardless of if I am interested in Green Fire World or Jian Wushuang, as long as our goal is the same, it will work, right? Great Emperor Zisu smiled. That's right. Green Fire World is very unusual. How could Jian Wushuang conquer such a world with boundless possibilities alone? The three of us might as well conquer Green Fire World first. Then, when the others discover the world, we can discuss then. As long as the three of us take hold of Green Fire World first, the three of us will definitely receive the most benefits, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. That's right. So let's not delay any further. Let's depart now, Abysmal Saint Master said. Great Emperor Zisu smiled faintly. The three Great Emperor immediately departed. However, it was not long after the three Great Emperors departed. They still had a fair distance to reach Green Fire World. A piece of news was spreading among experts in Eternal Chaotic World like wildfire. The news was about Greenfire World's existence. Greenfire World, that was nurtured by the ancient battlefield and had great potential. At the same time, it was also the biggest treasure in the entire ancient battlefield. The moment the news spread, the three great emperors who were on the way to Greenfire World found out immediately. ***. The news about Greenfire World has already spread. Abysmal Saint Master's face grew grave, and he reprimanded Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Colored Glaze, what's going on? I thought only you knew about Greenfire World. I never said that I was the first who found Greenfire World. Great Emperor Colored Glaze refuted coldly. The first who found out was Emperor God Xia Xian, and he was killed by Jian Wushuang long ago. As for the news, it was given to me by a Sir God from Colored Glaze Sanctuary, who just broke through not long ago. He was Emperor God Xia Zins Jr. He told me about Greenfire World, and the condition was for me to kill Jian Wushuang on his behalf. I agreed with him on the surface, but now, he has found out that I can't kill Jian Wushuang. Hence, he naturally has to figure out other ways. It is normal that he would spread the news. You knew that he would announce the news to the public. Why didn't you kill him directly? Abysmal Saint Master asked coldly. Abysmal, do you think I am as despicable as you? Great Emperor Colored Glaze teased. Plus, I can guarantee that he didn't keep his guard up. If he were to inform the others long ago and hide, so what? The news would spread even sooner if I were to kill him. Although the news spread, at least we have the upper hand. Colored Glaze is right. Zissou by the side spoke too. The big world on the ancient battlefield would be found sooner or later. There's no way to hide it. However, compared to the others, the three of us have gotten a head start. It's good enough. Abysmal Saint Master heard but didn't speak further. The three of them immediately sped up and rushed to Greenfire World. Then in Eternal Chaotic World, and on the ancient battlefield, there was a great commotion. A big world? The ancient battlefield nurtured a big world? The big world is located right at the core of the ancient battlefield. The spiritual influence of heaven and earth was the strongest there. If we were to be able to cultivate there is limitless possibilities. Greenfire World really carries limitless possibilities. Go, hurry up and go. A big world that is nurtured by the ancient battlefield. I wonder how it looks internally. Countless experts were shaken by the news and made their way to Greenfire World. Not only experts from human territories, but also experts of special tribes, all rushed to Greenfire World at the first instant when they heard the news. Greenfire World was everyone's focus. It was everyone's focus. However, when Sir God Shui Dao spread the news, he brought up Greenfire World, but he not Jian Wushuang. He knew that if the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance were to find out that Greenfire World was controlled by Jian Wushuang, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance would definitely find a way to message Jian Wushuang for him to hand out Greenfire World proactively. Regardless of the threats or temptations, Jian Wushuang might be forced to give in if he had no alternative. However, as long as Jian Wushuang had a string of hope and didn't hand over Greenfire World, experts from various forces would charge there altogether. Jian Wushuang might not have the time to regret then. In Greenfire World, although Jian Wushuang was in his secret room, the movement in Eternal Chaotic World, and the ancient battlefield, he received detailed information from Lineage of Star. It is widespread now. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, but he wasn't surprised. He knew that as long as the ancient battlefield was found out, it would be impossible to hide Greenfire World. Then, all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were shaken by the news, and they were on their way to Greenfire World. Greenfire World was enduring unprecedented pressure. Until now, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance had yet to get in touch with me. It seems that the person who spread the news only spoke of Greenfire World, but never mentioned me. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. The surrounding battlefield, the opportunities contained on the battlefield, take them if you want. However, Greenfire World is my route. No one should even think about touching it. That's my bottom line. I hope that you don't force me to then. Otherwise, I can only make that move. There was an intense light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes. In Greenfire World, besides himself, there was another trump card. That was the strongest trump card, the final trump card. Jian Wuxuang definitely wouldn't use the trump card unless he reached the final stage. If Jian Wuxuang were to be cornered, he absolutely wouldn't hesitate to use it. At the worst, they'd fight at the risk of mutual destruction. Chapter 1968 Force. Just as all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were shaken by the news about Green Fire World. On the ancient battlefield, in an underground ruin not too far away from Green Fire World. In the underground ruin, there was an underground palace. The underground palace was huge, and the interior was mysterious and unfathomable. An elder in a gold robe shuttled through the underground palace. The elder was an ordinary Sir God from Emperor Sword sect. He had found the existence of underground palace by sheer luck. After he found it, he had immediately started to explore to find the opportunities within. However, over the path, he didn't see any opportunity at all until he reached the depths of the underground palace. The elder in the gold robe was surprised. He saw that there was a figure seated on the empty land in front of him. No wonder there isn't an opportunity. It turns out that someone found the underground palace before I did. The elder in the gold robe glanced at the figure on the empty land with envy in his eyes. There were opportunities on the ancient battleground. But as there were more people started to wander around, it was normal that many of the opportunities were taken. The elder in the gold robe flashed a bitter smile, then he turned to leave. But suddenly, the figure that was seated on the empty land suddenly opened her eyes. Her pair of eyes were extremely brilliant, just like gemstones. At the same time, she slowly stood up. Her face was beautiful and her body was enchanting. She was in a tight red robe, which appeared to be extremely captivating. No doubt, she was a beautiful woman by which any man would be captivated and tempted. However, as the enchanting woman in the red robe stood up, there was a terrifying aura. The terrifying aura covered the elder in the gold robe. The elder in the gold robe was a Sir God. However, under such an aura, he revealed an unprecedentedly horrified expression, and he was shivering in fear. The elder in the gold robe took a deep breath and he bowed politely. I am Jian Luo from Emperor Sword sect. Emperor Sword sect. The enchanting woman in the red robe was surprised, but she never spoke. However, she took a huge stride as she walked to the elder in the gold robe. As she walked over, the brilliance in the enchanting woman's eyes became stronger. I'll ask you some questions. Answer me honestly. The enchanting woman in the red robe finally walked next to the elder in the gold robe. Yes, the elder in the gold robe had an absent look. No one could tell if he was in phantasmagoria or in a special state. In a short while, the enchanting woman in the red robe found out about things that she'd like to know from the elder in the gold robe. The ancient battlefield was found by the cultivators from this era? The enchanting woman in the red robe squinted her eyes. As the ancient battlefield is found, Green Fire World was definitely found as well. I wonder how Jian Wuxuang is going to deal with it. With a playful smile, the enchanting woman in the red robe moved and flew towards Green Fire World. Not long after she had left, the elder in the gold robe came back to reality. What happened? What happened to me earlier? Where's the mister just now? The elder in the gold robe looked lost, and he had no idea what had happened earlier. Outside Green Fire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze, Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Zisu. The three great emperors had arrived. Looking at the big world in front of them, Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Zisu couldn't help but sigh. Jian Wuxuang in Green Fire World had naturally noticed the three great emperors. Swoosh, swoosh. There were two loud air-piercing sounds. Jian Wuxuang and Jian Yi came out from Green Fire World and came before the three great emperors. Jian Wuxuang, I said earlier that I would return in no time. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold as she glared at Jian Wuxuang. Jian Wuxuang only glanced at Great Emperor Colored Glaze, but didn't bother talking to her at all. As for Abysmal Saint Master, he had originally shared great resentment with Abysmal Saint Master. During the war in Lineage of Star back then, Abysmal Saint Master had been determined to kill him. Fortunately, Emperor 13 had taken action. Otherwise, most likely he would have died back then. It was normal that Abysmal Saint Master came to look for him again. Then, Jian Wushuang's gaze was fixed upon the last Great Emperor Zisu. He also knew that Great Emperor Colored Glaze would get some help. It was within his expectations that he would invite one or two other Great Emperors, but he had never guessed that she would invite Great Emperor Zisu. Jian Wushuang knew about Great Emperor Zisu. He was a cold man. As long as the others didn't find trouble in him, he hardly took action against anyone. He was considered mild-tempered. Although he had never met Great Emperor Zisu before, they were connected. Back then, Jian Wushuang wanted to carry out his promise with real God Wu Bei and kill King Demon Heart. King Demon Heart had once sent a message to Great Emperor Zisu to ask for help. But then Great Emperor Zisu hadn't appeared or stopped Jian Wushuang. It could be considered a favor to Jian Wushuang. But then, Great Emperor Zisu, can you do me a favor again? I would be extremely grateful, Jian Wushuang said. Sword Emperor, I'm sorry. Green Fire World has associated greatly with everything else. So, Great Emperor Zisu had yet to finish his sentence. Jian Wushuang, don't have any unrealistic thoughts. I advise you to hand over Green Fire World directly. Then we won't attack. Abysmal Saint Master said coldly. Jian Wushuang stole a glance at Abysmal Saint Master, then scoffed. I thought, who was it? It is Abysmal Saint Master. Why? Have you recovered completely? Abysmal Saint Master's face stunned. 12,000 years ago, in the war and lineage of Star, he had been at the brink of death because of Emperor 13. The reason why Emperor 13 hadn't killed him was merely that he wasn't powerful enough to. That was absolutely humiliating to Abysmal Saint Master. Humph! You were nearly killed by Emperor 13 back in lineage of Star. Now, you have the guts to come here again. Abysmal Saint Master, you really have guts. Aren't you worried that Emperor 13 will take action against you again? Jian Wushuang humphed coldly. Abysmal Saint Master quivered, then he clenched his teeth and said, Jian Wushuang, don't think bringing up Emperor 13 can scare me. Back then when we were in lineage of Star, I could tell that although Emperor 13 saved you, I reckon you don't even know why he would do that yourself. In other words, you and he aren't that close. It is because of a certain reason he didn't wish for you to die. That's why he saved you. In other words, as long as I don't kill you, Emperor 13 won't reveal himself. I only want Green Fire World. As for if you are going to die, it doesn't matter. As long as I don't kill you. Chapter 1969 Fight a Pitch Battle. Abysmal Saint Master was still fearful of the mysterious expert Emperor 13. At least, before he was confident enough to deal with Emperor 13, he absolutely wouldn't dare to kill Jian Wushuang. However, he thought that as long as he didn't try to kill Jian Wushuang, Emperor 13 wouldn't surface. Let's not waste time with him. Seize the time and suppress him directly. Let's talk after we conquer Green Fire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Zisu nodded simultaneously. The aura of the three Great Emperor experts immediately spread around. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's chilliness soared and froze the surrounding void. Abysmal Saint Master was as dark as usual, boundless darkness without any light. Great Emperor Zisu was purely imaginary. He made people feel that he was like a cloud that was floating in the air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The three of them took action at the same time. Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated in shock. Then he took out a token. The token belonged to Emperor Bai. Mr. Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang sent a message at his fastest possible speed. As for how long it would take until Emperor Bai reply his message, Jian Wushuang had no idea either. However, he had to block everyone outside of Green Fire World before that. It naturally included the three great emperors in front of him. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze were in the 3rd, 5th and 6th place respectively. They were all powerful great emperors. Theoretically, their strengths are just like their ranking indicated. However, Abysmal Saint Master was severely injured by Emperor 13, and he has yet to recover fully. Hence among the three, he was the weakest while Great Emperor Zisu was the strongest. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Then he made up his mind. He flipped his hand, and 5 fire godly spirit mirrors appeared. He let the divine power flow into the 5 tall godly spirits in the universe. The moment the 5 godly spirits appeared, the surrounding void immediately became cold. Jian, you are best at manipulation of power of spacetime. You keep Great Emperor Zisu occupied. 5 godly spirits hold Great Emperor colored glaze back. As for Abysmal Saint Master, I'll take care of him. After Jian Wushuang commanded, Jian and the 5 godly spirits took action. Jian Wushuang also drew his Blood Mountain sword at the first instance, and there was sword and tension billowing. At the same time, he revealed 8 heads and 16 arms. He immediately charged at Abysmal Saint Master. Both parties immediately collided directly. Great Emperor Zisu was the strongest at the scene, and he was very skillful. His figure was vague and insubstantial. However, Jian, who was in charge, dealt with him and could manipulate power of spacetime far better than everyone else. Although he was weaker, he definitely wouldn't be defeated in a short time. The 5 fire formation formed by the 5 godly spirits was powerful. Great Emperor colored glaze already experienced it before. She wanted to break the 5 fire formation, but it was difficult for her as well. The only battle that had an extremely big disparity would be the battle between Abysmal Saint Master and Jian Wushuang. Die! Jian Wushuang was raging with anger. He appeared before Abysmal Saint Master and wielded a sword each with his 18 arms. Every stroke of sword light contained boundless power of reincarnation at a terrifyingly fast speed. Most importantly, it collaborated with his own divine power and the power of ancient tribe bloodline. Then it exploded with billowing power. However, Abysmal Saint Master didn't care about such an attack. Such a joke. Abysmal Saint Master sneered and casually pointed. Then, boundless darkness flowed out and instantly formed a black hand that grasped the void in front at lightning speed. Jian Wushuang slashed out with many sword lights, but the dark hand broke them apart. Jian Wushuang, you are only a real god. No matter how powerful you are, you could only have the fighting power of a peak emperor god at most. How dare you fight against me? Who gave you such courage? Abysmal Saint Master looked at Jian Wushuang in disdain, as he spat his scornful remark. Humph! Jian Wushuang humphed coldly as he retreated. Swoosh! 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 There were 5 continuous resplendent golden lights, which appeared next to Abysmal Saint Master. The 5 golden lights were extremely fast. Abysmal Saint Master raised his eyebrows, and a dark protective barrier substantiated. The 5 golden lights hit the dark protective barrier, and it shattered into pieces after 4 loud thuds. Then, the final golden light aimed at Abysmal Saint Master's head without hindrance. Abysmal Saint Master looked surprised, but his figure turned illusionary, and he dodged the golden light easily. Abysmal Saint Master regained stability in the void, and couldn't help but look at the 5 golden lights. Is this your infamous golden sword? You only had 4 previously, but now you have 5. Plus, they look like they have become much stronger. It seems that you have improved greatly, huh? Abysmal Saint Master looked at him with a cold gaze. It was true. It had been a total of 12,000 years since the war in Lineage of Star. To the ordinary almighties, the time span was naturally nothing. However, to Jian Wushuang, his power was of course different. During the 12,000 years, his comprehension towards doctrine had heightened massively. His comprehension of space-time doctrine and extermination doctrine had reached the extreme limit of the 8th level. He was only 1 step away from the 9th level, and his soul power became much stronger too. As a result, his control of Hongjun Golden Sword had grown too. Not only could he drive the 5th Hongjun Golden Sword, but his Hongjun Golden Sword power increased tremendously. Previously, one of his Hongjun Golden Sword equaled the power of an attack of a peak emperor god. Now the power of his Hongjun Golden Sword was equivalent to a peak emperor god's full hit with unique skill or secret skill. With the collaboration of 5 swords, they were of course fierce. I really belittled you. With 5 Hongjun Golden Swords, you should be able to be on par with an underworld god. However, you are still nothing in front of him. Abysmal Saint Master smiled coldly. Rumble. A huge dark whirlpool appeared behind Jian Wushuang. The dark whirlpool was unfathomable and contained boundless extermination power. At the very moment it appeared, Jian Wushuang's body was pulled and dragged greatly, as though he was going to be swallowed by the dark whirlpool. In the middle of the dark whirlpool, Abysmal Saint Master stepped on a dark demon dragon as they plunged out. Roar! The demon dragon let out a roar, and its roar shook the sky. Layers of dark ripples spread in the air as Abysmal Saint Master waved. Chapter 1970. Do you need help? Virum. He waved and a large dark cloud pressed at Jian Wushuang. The dark cloud covered the sky, and the power that it contained was far stronger than an emperor god. Jian Wushuang's eyes were bloodshot, while a terrifying sword intention swept out from his body. Among his 18 arms, there were 4 that were holding a sword at the same time. The swords were naturally Blood Mountain swords. Then Blood Mountain sword was roaring for blood and madness. It contained boundless unyieldingness. King Sword Principle first move. Slash. He was just like a monarch high and above as he raised the sword in his hand. When the sword slashed, there would be hundreds of millions of heads that would fall to the ground. Quang. A terrifying sword light was instantly magnified and engulfed tens of thousands of miles when it was slashed out. The sword light was shimmering in gold, looking rather eye-catching. It immediately hit the dark clouds above that were pressing down. Ong! The sword light pierced it. Then, the large dark cloud immediately dispersed. Ha! Abysmal Saint Master looked at Jian Wushuang in shock. He could tell that Jian Wushuang's power had reached the level of a great emperor. He had never used the secret skill of Star Palace, nor did he break any ancient star. But his sword principle itself had reached such level? Of course, the King Sword Principle was originally fierce. As Jian Wushuang's comprehension of sword principle increased, the power of his sword principle naturally became even stronger. The stroke was Jian Wushuang's strongest stroke. After that stroke, although Abysmal Saint Master's attack was blocked, Jian Wushuang didn't let loose, but he flicked his wrist, and a scroll painting appeared in his hand. Then, he threw the scroll painting in the air, and the scroll painting blended into the void. Suddenly, the sky above immediately churned. A captivating world of mountain and river appeared in the sky. Mountain River as Palm and 9 provinces seal. The third move overwhelmed the rain. Rumble. A vast land descended mightily. With Jian Wushuang's power, he performed the seal of overwhelm the rain without holding back. The power of the descending land barely reached the threshold of a great emperor. Looking at the descending land, Abysmal Saint Master's gaze was cold, and a few dark lights suddenly burst out. Ong! 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 A few dark lights piercing the land, and the entire lofty land immediately shattered into a few pieces. Boy, your skills are not too shabby. However, too bad it's useless. Abysmal Saint Master's voice was cold. Jian Wushuang's face grew dim. King Sword Principle. 9 Province Seal, the third seal. They were both his strongest attack skills. However, even though he had performed with his all, he had barely reached the threshold of a great emperor. Compared to a true emperor, he was nowhere near one. Just then, Abysmal, what are you doing? Why don't you hurry up and suppress that boy? There was a low bellow from the surrounding battlefield. The one who had spoken was naturally Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Great Emperor Zisu and herself were held back by the 5 godly spirits and Jian Yi. In a short time, it would be difficult to defeat their opponents. The only breaking point was with Abysmal Saint Master. Only if Abysmal Saint Master suppressed Jian Wushuang, and then he had an extra hand to join forces with them, Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits could be defeated in an instance. By then the battle would end. However, Abysmal Saint Master had yet to take Jian Wushuang down since the beginning of the war. Hearing Great Emperor Colored Glaze's roar, Abysmal Saint Master's corner of his lips twitched. He couldn't help but resent it. However, he couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. He was a top great emperor on the top 3 on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Even though he had yet to recover fully from his injuries, he was still much stronger than many other great emperor. He was far beyond Jian Wushuang as well. Most importantly was that he held scruples when he fought with Jian Wushuang. He was afraid that he might kill Jian Wushuang by accident if the hit was too powerful. Hence, he held back when he attacked. But in the end, because he held back, he couldn't take down Jian Wushuang. "Son, look at how I am going to trap you in." Abysmal Saint Master's voice was cold, but he had finally revealed his true power. There was boundless darkness that swept over and formed a huge black chain. The black chain was extremely sturdy, but they extended from all corners of the void without any symptoms, especially in the void around Jian Wushuang. There were dark whirlpools that appeared from nowhere. The black chains were moving to entangle Jian Wushuang simultaneously. Jian Wushuang's face changed, and the sword lights continuously swept out from him. His fighting power exploded to its extreme limit. He wanted to break apart those chains that were flying towards him. However, the chains were too flexible, too fast, and too plentiful. One slash after another extended over again and again. In a short while, the black chains formed a huge prison to seal off the spacetime that Jian Wushuang was in. It naturally trapped Jian Wushuang within as well. *T. Jian Wushuang looked shocked, and the sword intention swept out to slash the surrounding prison. However, no matter how he attacked, the black prison didn't move. When he performed King Emperor skill again, it could only shake the dark cover, but it was not enough to break it. After Jian Wushuang was trapped in the darkness prison, Abysmal Saint Master had the free time to fight elsewhere. Swoosh! Abysmal Saint Master's body moved, and he obviously moved to where the other two battles were. *T. Jian Wushuang suddenly thought, and the 7 ancient stars in between his eyebrows lit up. He knew that as soon as Abysmal Saint Master had the bandwidth to join other battles, he would be defeated. Hence, he had to perform his trump card to break the darkness prison and keep Abysmal Saint Master occupied again. He had 2 kinds of trump cards, the secret skill of Star Palace and the Star Destruction skill. The secret skill of Star Palace was extremely important, but it had yet to reach the time to really perform it. He naturally could only perform Star Destruction skill, just as Jian Wushuang was preparing to break his ancient star to increase his power. Hehe, it's so noisy here. There was a burst of faint laughter from the nearby void. The voice contained a special power. When it spread over to the battlefield, everyone who was fighting ferociously stopped instantly. Abysmal Saint Master, who had been hurrying to the other 2 battlefields, also stopped his footsteps to look at the direction of the source of the voice. Jian Wushuang also looked in the direction of the source of the voice. In the void, there was an enchanting woman in a tight red robe leaping over. Her footsteps were very slow, but every step she took leaped over a very long distance. Merely after a few steps, she appeared on the battlefield. The moment she appeared, her beautiful eyes looked at Jian Wushuang directly. "Jian Wushuang, long time no see. Do you need help?" Chapter 1971 Powerful Assistant. "Jian Wushuang, long time no see. Do you need help?" The incomer's faint laughter reverberated in the universe. Everyone at the scene was astonished. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze saw the incomer, and their eyes dilated in shock. No doubt, they had never seen an enchanting woman in a red robe. However, the enchanting woman in the red robe gave out an aura that wasn't weaker than theirs. She was definitely at the level of a great emperor. The moment she appeared, she brought about great pressure to the other 3 great emperors. She was obviously not only a great emperor, but an extremely strong great emperor. Previously, there was a mysterious Emperor 13. Then Jian Wushuang's sword servant reached the level of a great emperor. Now there's another great emperor? She obviously knew Jian Wushuang personally. Since when did great emperor experts become so invaluable? Great Emperor Colored Glaze muttered. However, they didn't know that Jian Wushuang was quite shocked then. He looked at the enchanting woman in the red robe, and it stirred a great commotion in his heart. The enchanting woman in the red robe. He of course knew her. Lord Spirit Sound. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but clenched. It's her. King of Venomous Worms who was living on Jian Wushuang was shocked too. That was right. The enchanting woman in the red robe, who had suddenly come was Lord Spirit Sound, who had stayed in Star Foggy Sea back then. Back then, before Jian Wushuang had yet to leave Green Fire World, he had once received a great opportunity. It was in Star Foggy Sea. Through the test on Star Island, he became a disciple of Star Palace in Lineage of Star. Then, Star Foggy Sea was under Lord Spirit Sound's control. When Jian Wushuang first saw Lord Spirit Sound, he thought Lord Spirit Sound was from Lineage of Star, and it was Master of Star Palace, who had intentionally arranged to pick disciples for Lineage of Star. Even Lord Spirit Sound had said that herself. When Jian Wushuang passed the test, and became a disciple of Star Palace in Lineage of Star, Star Foggy Sea had been within Jian Wushuang's control. Then, Lord Spirit Sound left and Jian Wushuang had no idea where she went. In the beginning, Jian Wushuang never minded much. But later on, when he really arrived in Lineage of Star, then became the new palace master of Lineage of Star, and after he had found out more about the environment of Green Fire World, he noticed the unusual. Firstly, everyone from Lineage of Star, including Master of Star Palace, had no idea who Lord Spirit Sound was. Hence, it was even more impossible that it could have been Master of Star Palace who arranged it. Secondly, under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for Star Foggy Sea to appear in Green Fire World. After knowing this, Jian Wushuang started suspecting Lord Spirit Sound's true identity. He had even asked King of Venomous Worm about that before. After all, King of Venomous Worms had stayed in Star Foggy Sea for a very long time, but he had said that he wasn't sure either. Just then, Lord Spirit Sound reappeared in front of him again. Jian Wushuang had finally determined that Lord Spirit Sound was from a great background. As for controlling Star Foggy Sea for Master of Star Palace, it was a plain joke. After all, the aura that Lord Spirit Sound had displayed was of great Emperor level. During the Master of Star Palace's peak, he was only a peak Emperor god. How could he command Lord Spirit Sound? Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. He didn't think further but answered, "Lord Spirit Sound, lend me a hand. I, Jian Wushuang, and Green Fire World will remember this." "No problem." Lord Spirit Sound smiled faintly. After that, she suddenly pointed with her delicate finger. Rumble. The space-time shook. The dark void where Jian Wushuang was instantly dispersed, and the vast darkness prison around him broke apart. There was boundless light that filled the universe. Jian Wushuang moved, and he immediately shook off the darkness prison. The sight shocked Abysmal Saint Master. "She broke my darkness prison so easily. This person's power is not any weaker than mine." Swoosh. Swoosh. Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze appeared next to Abysmal Saint Master. As for Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits, they naturally came behind Jian Wushuang. "Lord Spirit Sound, thank you." Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. "Hehe. Don't worry about it. I have stayed in Green Fire World for so many years, and I do have feelings for the place. How could I just sit and watch outsiders trying to conquer Green Fire World?" Lord Spirit Sound said with a smile. Jian Wushuang nodded, and he looked at the 3 great emperors again. "Lord Spirit Sound, could you please help me keep one of them busy next?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Sure." Lord Spirit Sound nodded, and then she pointed at Great Emperor Zisu. "Among the 3, this person in the purple robe is the strongest. I will keep him occupied, so he doesn't have extra time to attack. As for the other 2, you can take care of them." "No problem." Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. As long as Lord Spirit Sound could keep Great Emperor Zisu occupied, Jian Yi, the 5 gods and himself could deal with Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze. "Let's do it." Lord Spirit Sound didn't waste any more time but flew out. "Hey, you in purple robe, your opponent is I." Lord Spirit Sound flashed a malicious smile at Great Emperor Zisu. There was a strange light in her eyes. Great Emperor Zisu's heart skipped a beat. His face instantly grew solemn, and he lost the relaxed look earlier. "Oh, you could resist my magic. Not too shabby," Lord Spirit Sound commented. Then, there was an evil-looking crimson sickle in her hand. Wow! From a very far distance, the crimson sickle in Lord Spirit Sound's hand was swung out. Just like Death's sickle. Wow! 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 The 3 sickle lights swept out simultaneously, and instantly formed 3 brilliant sickle rivers in the void. The 3 sickle rivers were beautifully magnificent. They were captivating. The Sickle River flowed over, and Great Emperor Su instantly felt that he was in a billowing sickle ocean that he couldn't shake off. He instantly counterattacked. Every time he broke a sickle light, there was another brilliant sickle light that flew at him again. In an instant, Great Emperor Shisu of the 5th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list was suppressed by Lord Spirit Sound. So strong! Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glazes faces changed at the sight. They could tell that although Lord Spirit Sound was far below the mysterious Expert Emperor 13, she was much stronger than all the ordinary Great Emperors in Eternal Chaotic World. If they have to list her in terms of ranking and power, she absolutely could fight with Red Dragon King in the 2nd place. Even if I were to be at my peak status, I reckon I would still have the lower hand when I fought with this person, Abysmal Saint Master said. Then Jian Wushuang, Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits moved at the same time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.